When a ruthless mafia boss breaks his engagement in front of the entire household just to protect a terrified maid, the world he built on fear begins to collapse around him. One moment of cruelty, one split-second choice. And suddenly, the most dangerous man in the city realizes the monster he's become might be sitting across from him at dinner. This is a story about power, redemption, and the terrifying cost of finally seeing the truth. Follow this story to the end, hit like, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this tale has traveled. Rain hammered against the black iron windows of Ravencrest Estate like fists demanding entry. The sound should have been soothing, white noise to drown out the silence, but instead it felt like a warning. Inside, the dining hall stretched endlessly beneath chandeliers that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Every surface gleamed, every corner existed in perfect shadow, every breath felt measured. Dorian Vale sat at the head of the table and watched his world pretend to be civilized. He was 42 years old and had spent the last 20 building an empire that operated in the cracks between law and chaos. His name moved through criminal networks like a blade wrapped in expensive fabric. Politicians smiled when he entered rooms they secretly prayed he'd leave. Businessmen shook his hand and went home to check their security systems twice. He wasn't just wealthy, he was inevitable. Tonight he wore a black suit tailored so precisely it looked like armor. His dark hair was swept back from a face that revealed nothing. High cheekbones, sharp jaw, eyes the color of smoke that never blinked first during negotiations. Across from him sat Celine Viro. His fiancée of 8 months looked like she'd been carved from marble and dressed in moonlight. Silver satin clung to her frame with the kind of elegance that took years to master. Her blonde hair fell in perfect waves over bare shoulders. Diamonds circled her throat like captured stars. She was beautiful the way weapons were beautiful, designed for impact. The Korlov shipment cleared customs, she said, cutting into her steak with surgical precision. Your contact at the port performed exactly as expected. Dorian nodded once. Celine understood his world in ways most people never could. She didn't flinch at the truth of how money moved through his hands. Didn't ask questions about meetings that happened after midnight. Didn't pretend the fortune surrounding them came from anything legitimate. She was perfect for him. At least that's what he kept telling himself. Senator Graves called again, Celine continued. He's getting nervous about the vote next month. He'll fall in line. And if he doesn't? Dorian's expression didn't change. Then he'll discover how quickly campaign donations can become investigations. Celine smiled. Not warmly, approvingly. The conversation drifted into comfortable territory. Corrupt officials, offshore accounts, territorial disputes in the southern districts. They spoke about violence the way other couples discussed vacation plans. Around them, servants moved like ghosts trained to exist without sound. They refilled glasses before they emptied, cleared plates before anyone needed to ask, anticipated needs with the kind of precision that came from understanding that mistakes had consequences. Dorian barely noticed them anymore. That was the point. Lena Marrow had been working at Ravencrest Estate for 6 weeks and still wasn't used to the silence. Every footstep felt too loud. Every breath seemed like an intrusion. The other staff moved with practiced invisibility, but she was still learning how to disappear. She was 19 years old and desperately needed this job. Her mother's medical bills were drowning them both. The estate paid more in a month than she could make anywhere else in 6. So she learned to move quietly, learned to keep her eyes down, learned that in a house like this, being invisible was the same as being safe. Tonight, she'd been assigned to serve tea during the main course. Simple task. Boil water, steep leaves, pour without shaking. Her hands trembled anyway. She approached the table carrying the silver teapot like it might explode. Mr. Vale barely glanced at her. Miss Vero didn't acknowledge her existence at all. Good. Invisible meant safe. Lena reached for Celine's cup first. Protocol demanded serving the lady before anyone else. The porcelain felt fragile in her grip. Too delicate. Too expensive. Don't drop it. Don't drop it. Don't. The teapot tilted. Just slightly. Just enough. 3 drops of scalding tea splashed onto the white linen tablecloth near Celine's hand. Time stopped. The temperature in the room changed instantly. Not gradually, not subtly. One moment the air felt neutral, the next it felt dangerous. Lena's heart slammed against her ribs. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean... Celine's fork lowered to her plate with a soft clink that somehow sounded louder than the storm outside. What, she said quietly, is wrong with you? The words came out cold, precise. Each syllable felt like a threat. Lena's throat closed. It was an accident. I'll clean it immediately. Do you have any idea what this tablecloth cost? I'll replace it. I promise. Please, You'll replace it? Celine's laugh cut like glass. With what? Your pathetic salary? The other servants had frozen in place. No one moved. No one breathed. They all understood something Lena was just beginning to realize. This wasn't about the tablecloth. Dorian still hadn't looked up from his plate. His knife continued cutting through meat with mechanical precision. He'd seen this before. Mistakes happened. Punishments followed. That's how the world worked. Celine stood slowly. The movement drew every eye in the room. She reached for the teapot in Lena's trembling hands. If you can't perform a simple task, Celine said softly, perhaps you need a reminder about consequences. Then she hurled the boiling tea directly at the girl. Lena screamed. The sound tore through Ravencrest Estate like something breaking, high-pitched, primal, raw. She collapsed sideways, clutching her right arm where the liquid had splashed across her skin. Steam rose from her ruined sleeve. The teapot shattered against marble. Porcelain scattered like shrapnel. The scream echoed, then died. Then silence returned. Worse than before. Dorian's knife stopped moving. For several seconds, he remained perfectly still. Fork in one hand, knife in the other, both suspended above his plate like a paused photograph. Around him, the staff had lowered their heads immediately. No one rushed to help. No one gasped in shock. They knew better. Because in this house, compassion required permission. Lena sobbed on the floor. Broken sounds, panicked breathing, her fingers clawed at her burned arm through the soaked fabric. Celine sat back down and dabbed her mouth with a napkin. Someone clean this up, she said calmly. The casual cruelty of the statement hit harder than the violence. Dorian finally looked up, not at the broken teapot, not at the ruined tablecloth, at Lena. The girl had curled into herself on the cold marble, trying to make her body smaller, trying to disappear. Her dark hair had fallen across her face. Her shoulders shook violently. Every breath came out strangled. She looked terrified, not of the pain, of what came next. Something twisted inside Dorian's chest. Call the doctor, he said quietly. Celine glanced at him. For a servant? Now. The word carried weight that made two guards immediately reach for their phones. Celine's expression flickered, confusion, then annoyance. It was an accident, she said. She needed discipline. Dorian stood slowly. The movement drew immediate attention from every corner of the room. When he rose, people noticed. When he moved, they got out of the way. He walked toward Lena with measured steps. She flinched when he approached, a full-body recoil like she expected him to finish what Celine started. That reaction stopped him cold. For the first time in years, Dorian saw himself reflected in someone else's terror. Not respect, not careful deference, pure animal fear. She thought he was going to hurt her. Of course she did. Men like him had taught her that power and cruelty were the same thing. The realization hit him like a bullet he didn't see coming. He crouched down slowly, keeping distance between them. Let me see your arm. Lena shook her head frantically. I'm fine. I'm sorry. I'll clean it up. Please don't. I'm not going to hurt you. She didn't believe him. He could see it in her eyes. Why would she? Behind him, Celine's voice turned sharp. This is ridiculous. She spilled tea and got exactly what carelessness deserves. Dorian didn't turn around. He kept his attention on Lina, watching her try to control her breathing, watching her fail. You're safe, he told her. The words sounded foreign coming from his mouth. He'd spent 2 decades building a reputation on being the opposite of safe. His entire empire functioned because people understood that crossing him had permanent consequences. And now here he was, kneeling on expensive marble, trying to convince a terrified girl that the monster everyone knew him to be had suddenly developed a conscience. Lena's breathing began to slow. Barely. Her eyes searched his face for the trap. There had to be a trap. Men like Dorian Vale didn't protect servants. They owned them. The doctor arrived within 6 minutes, a private physician who asked no questions and kept his mouth shut about what he saw in houses like this. He knelt beside Lena immediately and began examining her arm with practiced efficiency. "Second-degree burns," he said quietly. "Needs immediate treatment." Dorian stood and finally turned to face Celine. She sat perfectly composed at the table, not a hair out of place, not a trace of remorse on her flawless face. "It's handled," she said. "Can we finish dinner?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Dorian reached for his cufflinks. Metal clicked softly as he removed first one, then the other. The small sound somehow filled the entire dining hall. Celine's expression shifted, just slightly. "What are you doing?" He placed the cufflinks on the table, then his watch, then finally the engagement ring he'd worn for 8 months. The platinum band hit the marble with a soft clink that might as well have been a gunshot. Every person in the room stopped breathing. Celine stared at the ring, then at him. "Dorian," she said carefully, "don't be dramatic. This isn't the woman I'm marrying." The words came out quiet, final. Celine's composure cracked, just a fraction. "You're ending this over a servant?" "No." Dorian's voice remained calm, almost detached. "I'm ending this because I finally see you clearly." "See me?" Celine stood abruptly. The chair scraped against marble. "You've known exactly who I am since the day we met." "I thought I did." "Nothing's changed." "You're right." Dorian looked directly into her eyes. "That's the problem." Celine's face hardened. She stepped closer, fury burning through the elegant mask she wore so well. "You think you're better than me?" she hissed. "After everything you've done?" The accusation landed because it was true. Dorian had ordered violence, destroyed competitors, built his fortune on fear and broken bones. His hands weren't clean. They'd never been clean. But watching Celine burn someone weaker, simply because she could, had forced him to confront something he'd been avoiding for years. Not who she was, who he'd become by accepting it. "I know exactly what I am," he said. "Then what is this?" Celine gestured toward Lena, who the doctor was still treating on the floor. "Sudden morality? A conscience?" "Maybe." "You don't get to change the rules now, not after building this life." "Watch me." The challenge hung between them like drawn steel. Celine's expression shifted rapidly, confusion to anger to something that looked almost like panic. "You're choosing her over me?" "No." Dorian turned away completely. "I'm choosing the man I refuse to become." The words struck harder than any physical blow, because they were absolute. Celine realized then that she was losing more than a fiancé. She was losing protection, status, power, the entire empire attached to his name, everything she'd positioned herself to inherit. "This is insane," she said, but her voice wavered. "One weak girl cries and suddenly you grow a conscience?" Dorian didn't answer. The doctor finished bandaging Lena's arm and helped her to her feet. She swayed slightly, still shaking, still afraid. "Take her to the east wing," Dorian told the nearest guard. "Make sure she's comfortable." "Yes, sir." As they helped Lena toward the exit, she glanced back once. Her eyes met Dorian's for just a second. No gratitude, no trust, just confusion. Like she couldn't understand why the most dangerous man she'd ever met had suddenly decided to be something else. Neither could he. Celine watched them leave, then turned back to Dorian with cold calculation replacing the panic. "You'll regret this," she said. "Everyone will know you're weak. Let them. I could destroy you. You could try." The threat fell flat because they both knew the truth. Celine had power only because Dorian had given it to her. Without him, she was just another beautiful face in a city full of them. She realized it too. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "I loved you," she whispered. "No." Dorian's voice gentled slightly, not with affection, with pity. "You loved what I could give you." "And what can she give you?" Celine's laugh came out brittle. "Gratitude? Innocence? Nothing." The honesty surprised them both. "Then why?" Dorian looked around the dining hall, at the expensive art, the crystal chandeliers, the marble floors that cost more than most people's homes. "Because I'm tired," he admitted. of being the person this life requires. Celine stared at him like he'd started speaking a foreign language. Maybe he had. "You're going to wake up tomorrow," she said finally, "and realize you made the biggest mistake of your life." "Maybe. I won't be here when you do." "I know." She grabbed her clutch from the table with shaking hands. Dignity was slipping, but she fought to hold on to the pieces. At the doorway, she paused. "You're not a good man, Dorian," she said without turning around. "One noble gesture doesn't change decades of blood." "You're right." "Then why bother?" He thought about Lena's scream, the way she'd curled into herself, the absolute certainty in her eyes that more pain was coming. "Because I have to start somewhere." Celine left without another word. The door closed behind her with a soft click that somehow sounded final. Dorian stood alone in the dining hall, surrounded by half-eaten food and broken porcelain. Rain continued hammering against the windows. The storm showed no signs of stopping. He picked up the engagement ring from the table. Platinum felt heavy in his palm, cold. 20 years of building an empire. 20 years of making himself into something people feared. And in one moment, he'd thrown it all into question. For what? A terrified girl he didn't know? A conscience he'd buried so deep he'd forgotten it existed? The truth was simpler and more complicated. He'd seen himself reflected in Lena's fear, seen what he'd become, what he'd accepted, what he'd enabled, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, it made him sick. Dorian walked through empty corridors toward the east wing. Guards nodded as he passed. Servants vanished into doorways. The estate felt larger at night, colder. He found Lena in one of the guest rooms, sitting on the edge of an ornate bed that probably cost more than her entire apartment. Her arm was properly bandaged now. Someone had brought her clean clothes. She looked small against all that luxury. The door was open, but he knocked anyway. She jumped at the sound. "Can I come in?" he asked. Lena nodded slowly. Suspicion still clouded her eyes. Smart girl. Dorian stayed near the doorway, keeping distance. "How's your arm?" "It hurts." Honest answer. He appreciated that. "The doctor left medication. Take it." "Okay." Silence settled between them. Awkward. Heavy. "You should hate me," Dorian said finally. Lena's fingers twisted in the fabric of her new shirt. "Why?" "Because I let it happen. I sat there and did nothing while she—" He stopped. "You got hurt in my house. Under my watch. You stopped her. Too late. But you stopped her." The simple statement hit harder than it should have. Dorian had spent 2 decades being praised for ruthlessness, for making hard decisions, for doing what needed to be done regardless of cost. No one had ever thanked him for stopping. "What happens now?" Lena asked quietly. "Good question. You'll stay here tonight," he said. "Tomorrow, I'll arrange for you to go wherever you feel safe. I need this job. You'll be paid. For tonight. For the injury. For—" He stopped. "You don't work here anymore." Panic flashed across her face. "Please, my mother needs—" "You'll be paid," he repeated firmly. "More than fairly, but you're not staying in this house." "Because of what happened?" "Because you deserve better than working for people like me." Lena stared at him like he was speaking riddles. Maybe he was. "Miss Vero," she said carefully, "is she really gone?" "Yes." "Because of me. Because of who she showed herself to be. But if I hadn't spilled the tea, then I would have learned the truth some other way." Dorian's voice hardened. "Or worse, I wouldn't have learned it at all." He meant it. That scared him more than the violence. The possibility that he could have married Celine, built a life with her, accepted her cruelty as normal because his own conscience had been buried too deep to notice. Lena pulled her knees up to her chest. "Everyone says you're dangerous." "I am." "Are you going to hurt me?" The question was asked so simply, so directly. No manipulation, no games, just a 19-year-old girl trying to understand if she was safe. "No," Dorian said. "Why should I believe you?" He almost smiled. "You shouldn't." That seemed to relax her slightly. Honesty was easier to trust than promises. "Get some rest," he told her. "Someone will bring you breakfast in the morning." Dorian turned to leave. "Mr. Vale?" He stopped. "Thank you," Lena said quietly. for stopping her. The words shouldn't have mattered, but they burned in his chest like brands. He nodded once and left before his expression could betray how much two simple words from a terrified servant had managed to crack something he'd thought was unbreakable. The next morning arrived gray and cold. Selena's belongings were gone before sunrise. Her name vanished from accounts, security protocols, private networks, guest lists. Within hours, it was like she'd never existed at Ravencrest Estate at all. The staff whispered frantically in corners. Speculation ran wild. What did it mean? Who was in favor? Who was next? Dorian ignored all of it. He spent the morning in his office making calls, restructuring agreements, moving assets. Selene had been woven into parts of his operation, not deep enough to matter, but enough to require untangling. By noon, it was done. She was erased. He should have felt relief. Instead, he felt nothing. That afternoon, he found Lena in the estate garden. She stood beneath an iron pergola wrapped in climbing roses, staring at the city skyline visible beyond the walls. Her injured arm hung carefully at her side. She'd changed into jeans and a simple sweater, her own clothes, not estate uniforms. Rain had returned, light drizzle that made everything look softer than it was. Dorian approached slowly so he wouldn't startle her. "You're still here," he said. Lena turned. "They said I could stay until I felt ready to leave." "And? I don't know where to go." Honest again. Dorian studied her face. No makeup, hair pulled back. She looked younger than 19, more fragile than she probably was. "Your mother," he said. "The medical bills." Lena's expression shuddered immediately. "How did you—" "I looked into your file. Before hiring you." "That was 6 weeks ago." "I remember." She shifted uncomfortably. "The bills aren't your problem." "They could be." Suspicion returned. "Why would you help me?" "Because I can." "That's not a reason." "It's the only one I have." Lena wrapped her arms around herself against the drizzle. "People don't just help for no reason. Especially people like you." "People like me?" "Dangerous people." The word sounded different when she said it, not respectful, not awed, just factual. "You're right," Dorian admitted. "I'm dangerous. I've done things that would horrify you, hurt people, destroyed lives. Then why should I trust anything you offer?" "You shouldn't." That answer surprised her. "Then what do you want from me?" "Nothing. Everything. Some proof that he could still make a choice that wasn't about power or control or building empires on fear." "I want to make sure you and your mother are taken care of," he said. "No strings. No obligations. Just a debt I owe for what happened in my house." Lena studied his face like she was reading a map in a foreign language. "And after?" she asked. "After, you never see me again." "That's it?" "That's it." She didn't believe him. He could see the doubt written clearly in her expression, but she also didn't walk away. "My mother's treatments cost $30,000 a month," Lena said quietly. "I can't afford that, ever." "Consider it handled." "Just like that?" "Just like that." Lena laughed once. Sharp, disbelieving. "Who are you?" Dorian didn't have an answer. Didn't. 24 hours ago, he would have said he was a man who built empires, who controlled territories, who made politicians sweat and competitors disappear. Now, he was just tired. "Someone trying to be less of a monster," he said finally. "That's a low bar." "It's higher than you think." They stood in silence while rain continued falling. The garden smelled like wet earth and roses. Traffic hummed distantly beyond estate walls. "Okay," Lena said. "Okay? I'll let you help, but only because I'm desperate and my mother needs it. That's reason enough. And after she's better, we're done. I don't want to owe someone like you." "Understood." Lena turned back toward the city skyline. "You know what the worst part is?" "What?" "I almost believe you're serious." "I am." "That scares me more than if you were lying." Dorian understood completely. The truth was more dangerous than any deception, because truth required change, required looking at the foundation your entire life was built on and admitting it was rotten. He'd spent one night doing exactly that, and now the cracks were spreading. That evening, Dorian sat alone in his office, reviewing reports that suddenly felt meaningless. Territory disputes, revenue streams, political leverage, all the mechanisms that kept his empire running. None of it mattered the way it had yesterday. His phone buzzed. Message from Marcus Chen, his oldest ally and most trusted lieutenant. Heard about Celine. You good? Dorian stared at the text. Was he good? He'd destroyed an 8-month engagement over spilled tea and burned skin, rearranged his entire operation in less than 24 hours, promised to pay for a stranger's medical bills with money that came from sources that would make her sick if she knew. Good wasn't the word. I'm figuring it out, he typed back. Need anything? Time. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. You've got it. But Vale, whatever you're doing, be careful. Dorian set the phone down. Be careful. Good advice, useless advice, because the thing he needed to be careful of wasn't external, wasn't competitors or law enforcement or power vacuums. It was the voice in his head asking questions he'd spent 20 years refusing to hear. What if everything you built was wrong? What if power isn't the same as strength? What if the person you became is exactly who you needed to avoid? The rain intensified outside. Thunder rolled across the city like drums. Dorian walked to the window and stared out at the lights below. Millions of lives, millions of people who would never know his name. Most would be grateful for that. Somewhere in that sprawl, Lena's mother was dying because healthcare cost more than hope. Somewhere, Celine was probably already planning her next move, another wealthy target, another empire to infiltrate. Somewhere, men Dorian had destroyed were still dealing with consequences. And here he stood in a mansion built on fear, wondering if one moment of decency could possibly balance decades of calculated cruelty. The answer was no. Of course it was no. But maybe that wasn't the point. Maybe the point was trying anyway. His reflection stared back at him from the rain-streaked glass. Same face, same eyes, same man. But something had shifted beneath the surface, something fragile and dangerous, like the first crack in a dam that's held back too much pressure for too long. Dorian turned away from the window. Tomorrow, he'd make arrangements for Lena's mother, transfer funds, set up accounts that couldn't be traced back to their source. Tomorrow, he'd start the much harder work of figuring out who Dorian Vale could become if he stopped being the person everyone expected. Tonight, he just stood in the darkness and listened to the storm. And for the first time in 20 years, wondered if the empire he'd built was worth saving, or if the kindest thing he could do was let it burn. The money transferred at 3 a.m. Dorian sat in his office watching numbers move across encrypted screens while the city slept. $300,000 split across accounts designed to look legitimate. Medical funds. Living expenses. Everything Lena's mother would need for the next year. Clean money, technically. Though nothing in Dorian's world stayed clean for long, he pressed send and watched the transaction complete. Irreversible. Done. His phone buzzed immediately. Marcus Chen never slept when something felt wrong. That's a lot of money for a maid you fired, Dorian typed back. It's handled. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. People are talking. Let them. Celine's telling anyone who'll listen that you've lost your mind. Maybe I have. The dots stopped. No response came. Marcus was probably sitting in his apartment downtown, staring at his phone, trying to calculate what this meant. How the power structure was shifting. Whether Dorian had become a liability. Smart questions. Dorian didn't have answers. He shut down his computer and walked through dark hallways toward his bedroom. The estate felt different now. Emptier. Like Celine's absence had created a vacuum that nothing could fill. Or maybe he was just finally noticing how hollow it had always been. Sleep didn't come. He lay in expensive sheets staring at ceiling shadows and wondering what the hell he was doing. One act of decency didn't erase 20 years of calculated violence. Didn't resurrect the people he'd destroyed, didn't unbreak the bones or unpay the bribes or undo the corruption. But it was something. Maybe. Rain hammered against windows until dawn. Lena discovered the money at 6 a.m. when her bank app notification woke her from restless sleep. She stared at her phone screen in disbelief, then checked again, then called the bank's automated line to confirm she wasn't hallucinating. $300,000. Deposited from something called Meridian Health Solutions, LLC. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped the phone. This wasn't help. This was a chain. This was debt so massive she'd never escape it. People like Dorian Vale didn't give away fortunes without expecting something in return. Everyone knew that. She pulled on clothes and left the guest room before anyone could stop her. The estate was just waking up. Servants moved through corridors preparing for another day of invisible service. Lena found Dorian in the breakfast room drinking coffee and reading reports like he hadn't just upended her entire life. He looked up when she entered. "You're up early. What did you do?" Her voice came out strangled. "I told you I'd handle it." "That's not handling it. That's—" She couldn't find words. "That's insane." Dorian set down his coffee. "Your mother needs treatment. Now she can get it." "I can't accept this." "You already did. The money's in your account." "Then I'll send it back." "To where?" He gestured vaguely. "The LLC is a shell. There's no return address." Lena's breathing accelerated. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. Nobody gives away $300,000 for nothing." "I do." "Why?" The question hung between them like smoke. Dorian looked tired, really tired, like he'd aged 10 years overnight. "Because I can," he said finally. "Because your mother is dying and I have more money than I'll ever need, and maybe doing one decent thing might prove I'm not completely—" He stopped. "Just take it. Use it. Save her." "And then what? You own me?" "No." "You own my mother?" "No." "Then what's the catch?" "There isn't one." Lena laughed, sharp, bitter. "You're lying." "I'm not. Everyone lies, especially people with power." Dorian stood slowly, not threateningly, just exhausted. "You're right," he admitted. "I've lied more times than I can count, manipulated, destroyed, built everything I have on making sure people owed me. So this is the same." "No." His voice dropped. "This is me trying to prove it doesn't have to be." The honesty in his tone caught her off guard. Lena wanted to keep being angry, wanted to throw the money back in his face, wanted to walk out and never think about Ravencrest Estate again. But her mother was dying, and $300,000 was life. "I hate this," she whispered. "I know. I hate that you put me in this position. I know. If you use this against me, I won't. If you try to control me, I won't." Lena's eyes burned. "I don't trust you." "Good." Dorian's expression softened slightly. "You shouldn't." They stood in tense silence while morning light filtered through windows. "My mother doesn't know where the money came from," Lena said finally. "Tell her whatever you want. And if she asks questions, tell her you won the lottery. Tell her a distant relative died. Tell her the truth. Doesn't matter to me." "Nothing matters to you?" "Not the way it used to." That admission scared her more than threats would have. Lena turned to leave, then stopped. "What happened to you?" "What do you mean?" "Yesterday you were engaged to someone who threw boiling tea at me. Today you're giving me a fortune. What changed?" Dorian looked down at his hands. They looked ordinary, unremarkable. Hard to believe they'd signed orders that ended lives. "I saw myself clearly for the first time in years," he said, "and I didn't like what I saw." "So this is guilt?" "Probably." "That's not good enough." "I know." Lena shook her head and walked out before the conversation could get more complicated. Dorian stood alone in the breakfast room, listening to her footsteps fade down the hallway. This was supposed to feel good, helping someone, making a difference. Instead, it felt like standing on crumbling ground, waiting for the collapse. Marcus Chen arrived at Ravencrest Estate at noon with the kind of expression that meant serious conversation. He was 45, built like someone who'd spent years in the military, with graying hair and eyes that missed nothing. He'd been with Dorian since the beginning, helped build the empire, buried the bodies, literally and figuratively. If anyone had earned the right to ask hard questions, it was Marcus. They met in Dorian's private study. No staff, no witnesses. Marcus didn't sit down. "Tell me you know what you're doing," he said. "I don't." "That's not comforting." "It's honest." Marcus paced near the bookshelves. "You dumped Celine, fine. She was always more viper than partner, but 300 grand for some random girl. She's not random. She worked here 6 weeks. She got hurt in my house. People get hurt, that's life. Not like that. Marcus stopped pacing. What happened? Dorian explained. The spilled tea. Celine's reaction. The scream that had somehow broken through 20 years of carefully constructed emotional armor. Marcus listened without interrupting. When Dorian finished, Marcus was quiet for a long moment. So you had a conscience attack, he said finally. Something like that. And decided to upend your entire life? I ended an engagement. That's not upending anything. You ended an engagement that was supposed to solidify your position with the Vero family. Celine's father controls half the Port Authority. I know who he controls, and now he's going to be a problem. Let him try. Marcus's expression hardened. This isn't a game, Dorian. You don't just walk away from these alliances. Watch me. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking clearly for the first time in years. No. Marcus stepped closer. You're feeling. That's different, and feelings get people killed in our world. The truth of that statement hung heavy. Dorian had built his empire by removing emotion from decision-making, by calculating risk and reward without sentiment clouding judgment. Feelings were weakness. Compassion was liability. He'd believed that completely. Until he'd watched Celine burn someone weaker and felt nothing but disgust. Maybe I'm tired of our world, Dorian said quietly. Marcus stared at him. You don't get to be tired. You're in too deep. Everyone gets tired eventually. And then what? You retire? Disappear? Live like normal people? Maybe. That's fantasy. Is it? Yes. Marcus's voice turned sharp. You've made too many enemies, crossed too many lines. You try to walk away, and someone will put a bullet in your head before you make it to the property line. Then I'll die clean. The statement shocked them both. Marcus recovered first. What the hell happened to you? I told you, I saw myself clearly. And you didn't like it. Would you? Marcus looked away. That's not the point. It's exactly the point. Silence settled thick between them. Marcus finally sat down heavily in one of the leather chairs. He looked older suddenly, tired. I've known you 20 years, he said. Watched you build this from nothing. You were ruthless, brilliant, unstoppable. And now? Now you sound like someone with a death wish. Maybe I'm just someone who wants to sleep at night. You haven't had trouble sleeping before. I have now. Marcus rubbed his face. This is about the girl. It's about what the girl represents. Which is? Proof that I can still choose to be something other than what I've become. One good deed doesn't erase. I know. Dorian cut him off. I know it doesn't erase anything, but it's a start. A start toward what? Honest question? Dorian didn't have an answer. His phone buzzed, unknown number. He answered anyway. Vale, we need to talk. Celine's voice dripped poison. Now. Dorian's expression didn't change. There's nothing to discuss. You ruined me. You ruined yourself. By disciplining a servant? By showing me who you really are? Celine laughed, cold, sharp. You knew who I was. I thought I did. Nothing changed, Dorian. The only difference is you suddenly grew a conscience over some nobody. Her name is Lena. I don't care what her name is. Celine's voice turned venomous. You humiliated me. Threw me out like garbage. Do you have any idea what that's done to my reputation? I imagine it's damaged. Damaged? She practically spat the word. I'm a joke. The woman who couldn't keep Dorian Vale satisfied. The fiancé who got dumped for a maid. You got dumped for being cruel. And you're suddenly the moral authority? No, just someone who's done enabling it. Static crackled on the line. When Celine spoke again, her voice had changed, colder, more dangerous. You're going to regret this, she said. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Noted. I know things about you, Dorian, things that could destroy everything you've built. Then use them. The response clearly surprised her. What? If you have leverage, use it. Burn it all down. I don't care anymore. You're bluffing. Try me. Silence stretched. What happened to you? Celine whispered. I woke up. To what? The truth. Which is that I've spent 20 years becoming someone I despise. Celine laughed again, brittle, almost hysterical. One servant cries and you have an existential crisis? Something like that. You're pathetic. Probably. I loved you. No, you didn't. How would you know? Because love doesn't burn people for spilling tea. The words hit like bullets. Celine's breathing changed, faster, angrier. You'll come crawling back, she said, when you realize what you threw away. I won't. We'll see. She hung up. Dorian set his phone down slowly. Marcus had been listening to the whole conversation. She's going to be a problem. I know. She knows about the Korlov deal, the senator, half our operation. I know. And you're just going to let her walk around with that information? What's the alternative? Kill her? Marcus didn't answer, which was answer enough. Dorian stood and walked to the window. Rain had returned. Always rain lately, like the city was trying to wash itself clean and failing. I'm not killing Celine, he said quietly. Even if she goes to the authorities? Even then. That's suicide. That's the price of change. Marcus stood abruptly. You've lost your mind. Maybe. No, not maybe. Definitely. Marcus grabbed his jacket. I've supported you for 20 years, followed every decision. But this? This is where you draw the line? This is where I watch you throw everything away over guilt. It's not just guilt. Then what is it? Dorian turned from the window. It's the first step toward being someone I can live with. Marcus stared at him for a long moment. And if that step gets you killed, then at least I died trying. That's not good enough. It is for me. Marcus headed toward the door, stopped, looked back. I'll give you a week, he said. 1 week to figure out whatever this is. Then I'm making executive decisions about Celine. Don't. Someone has to protect you, even from yourself. Marcus. 1 week, Dorian. After that, all bets are off. He left before Dorian could argue. The study felt colder after he was gone. Dorian sat alone with his thoughts, and the sound of rain, and the growing certainty that he'd set something in motion that couldn't be stopped. 3 days passed. Lena didn't return to Ravencrest Estate. She called once to confirm her mother's first treatment had been scheduled, then vanished back into the city. Smart girl. Celine started her campaign of destruction on day 2. Subtle at first. Rumors in the right circles. Questions about Dorian's stability. Suggestions that maybe the great Dorian Vale was losing his edge. By day 3, it wasn't subtle anymore. She met with competitors, dropped hints about vulnerabilities in his operation, shared just enough information to make people interested without revealing her full hand. Dorian watched it happen through reports from his network. He did nothing. Marcus called every few hours, each time more frustrated. She's positioning herself with the Kozlov family, he said on the 3rd night. Do you understand what that means? I understand. They've been waiting for an opening for years. I know. And you're just going to let her hand it to them? What do you want me to do, Marcus? Kill her? Threaten her family? Prove her right about what kind of person I am? I want you to protect what we've built. Maybe what we've built isn't worth protecting. The line went dead. Marcus didn't call back. That night, Dorian couldn't sleep at all. He walked through empty hallways, thinking about empire and legacy and the difference between power and strength. His father had taught him young, weakness gets you killed, sentiment is liability, take what you want and never apologize. Dorian had followed that philosophy perfectly for 2 decades, built something massive, unstoppable, and now it was crumbling, not because enemies attacked, because he'd decided to stop defending it. Morning arrived gray and cold. At 9 a.m., his head of security knocked on the study door. Sir, we have a situation. Dorian looked up from paperwork that didn't matter anymore. What kind? Lena Marrow was followed home last night. Ice flooded his veins. By who? Unknown. Professional work. They kept distance but made sure she noticed. Where is she now? At her apartment. Called her friend at 3 a.m. scared. The friend called us. Dorian was moving before the sentence finished. Lena's apartment was in a part of the city where streetlights flickered and security cameras were decorative at best. Fourth floor walk-up in a building that looked one inspection away from condemnation. Dorian arrived with 2 guards and enough rage to fuel a war. She answered the door on the third knock, eyes red, face pale. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Let me in." "No." "Someone followed you last night." Her expression confirmed it. "How did you know?" "Because people are trying to get to me through you. I'm not connected to you." "They don't know that." "Can I come in?" Lena hesitated, then stepped aside. The apartment was tiny, clean but worn. One bedroom barely visible through a half-open door. Furniture that looked salvaged. The kind of place where every dollar mattered. "Your mother?" Dorian asked. "At the hospital. Started her first treatment yesterday." "Good. Is that why you're here? To check on her?" "I'm here because you were followed." "So?" "So someone's using you to hurt me." Lena's hands clenched. "I told you this money would come with strings." "It didn't, but my enemies don't know that." "Then tell them." "They won't believe me." "Why not?" "Because I wouldn't believe me either." Lena sat down hard on her threadbare couch. She looked exhausted, scared. "What do they want?" she asked. "Leverage, information, something they can use to force me into mistakes." "And if they can't get it?" Dorian didn't answer. Lena understood anyway. Her breathing accelerated. "I'm in danger because you decided to have a conscience?" "Yes." "That's insane. Welcome to my world." She laughed. No humor in it. "I should never have taken the money. Too late now." "So what happens? You protect me? Lock me in your fortress until this blows over?" "If necessary." "I'm not going back there." "Then I'll put you somewhere safe." "Where? Witness protection?" "Something like that." Lena stood abruptly. "No, I'm not running. I'm not hiding. I have a life." "Your life is in danger. Because of you." The accusation landed hard. Because it was true. Dorian had made one impulsive decision. Breaking off his engagement, helping a girl he barely knew, and now that decision was rippling outward with consequences he hadn't calculated. In his old life, he would have seen this coming, would have planned for every contingency, would never have exposed himself to this kind of vulnerability. But that was the point, wasn't it? The old life was built on never letting anything matter. "You're right," he said. "This is my fault. But that doesn't change the fact that you're in danger. So fix it. I'm trying. Try harder." "I will. But until then, you need protection." "From who?" "People like me." The honesty stopped her. Lena stared at him for a long moment. "You're serious?" "Yes." "About all of it? The guilt? The change? The—" She gestured vaguely. "Whatever this is." "Yes." "Why should I believe you?" "Because I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to let me keep you alive." Her laugh came out broken. "That's a hell of a sales pitch." "It's all I have." Movement outside the window caught Dorian's attention. Black sedan, tinted windows. Too nice for this neighborhood. His guards noticed it too. "Sir," one of them said quietly. Dorian pulled Lena away from the window. "How many exits does this building have?" "2, front and fire escape." "The fire escape goes where?" "Alley behind the building." "Good. We're leaving. Now." "What? Why?" "Because whoever followed you last night just came back." Lena went pale. Outside, car doors opened. Dorian's phone buzzed. "Marcus, you need to see this." A photo loaded. Celine sitting across from Viktor Kozlov, head of the family that had been trying to take Dorian's territory for 5 years. They were shaking hands. The timestamp was 20 minutes ago. "Move," Dorian said. "Now!" They took the fire escape. Metal rattled under their feet as they descended into the alley. Dorian kept Lena behind him while his guards covered both directions. The alley opened onto a side street where one of Dorian's armored cars was already waiting. "Get in," he told Lena. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere they can't find you." "That's not an answer." Footsteps echoed from the alley behind them. 3 men, not even trying to hide anymore. Dorian's guards moved instantly. One positioned himself between the threat and Lena. The other reached for his weapon. Get in the car, Dorian repeated. This time Lena obeyed. The men from the alley stopped at a careful distance, not attacking, just watching, making their presence known, sending a message. Dorian met their eyes across the empty street. They smiled, then pulled back into the alley and vanished. Dorian climbed into the car beside Lena. Drive. The vehicle pulled away from the curb with surgical precision. Lena was shaking. Who were they? Kozlov's people. What did they want? To let me know they can get to you whenever they choose. Why didn't they? Because that's not how this works. They're not trying to kill you. They're trying to control me. Through me. Yes. Lena pressed her hands against her face. This is insane. I know. I'm just some random girl. Why do they care? Because I made you matter. You barely know me. They don't know that. All they see is Dorian Vale breaking off an engagement and immediately paying massive medical bills for someone. That's connection enough. So they'll what? Kidnap me? Hurt me? If it serves their purpose. Lena's breathing turned ragged. I want out. There is no out, not anymore. Then what? Then you let me protect you until I can neutralize the threat. How long will that take? I don't know. Hours? Days? Maybe weeks. I can't disappear for weeks. My mother will be protected. I'll have people at the hospital 24/7. This is insane, Lena repeated. All of this. Over spilled tea. Dorian almost smiled. Yeah. You regret it yet? Helping me? He thought about that. About the empire cracking around him. About Celine allying with his worst enemies. About Marcus losing faith. About everything he'd built threatening to collapse. No, he said. Lena stared at him. You're crazy. Probably. Definitely. They drove in silence through morning traffic. The safe house was in the industrial district. Nondescript building, heavy security that didn't advertise itself. The kind of place people vanished into when they needed to disappear. Dorian had used it twice before, both times for witnesses who needed protection from people exactly like him. The irony wasn't lost. Inside, the space was functional, clean, secure. No windows facing the street. Lena looked around with growing horror. This is a prison. It's temporary. How temporary? As temporary as I can make it. She sank onto the couch, looked small, scared. Nothing like the girl who'd stood in his garden 3 days ago and called him dangerous. My mom's going to worry, she said quietly. I'll have someone tell her you're helping a friend. Family emergency. She'll want to talk to me. You can call her, just don't tell her where you are. And my job? Hollow laugh. Oh wait, I don't have one anymore. Dorian crouched down so they were eye level. I'm going to fix this. How? By ending it. What does that mean? It means I'm done playing defense, done letting Celine and Kozlov think they have leverage. And then? And then you go home, live your life, never think about me again. Lena searched his face. You really believe that? I have to. Why? Because the alternative is accepting that one decent choice destroyed both our lives. Maybe it did. No. Dorian stood. I destroyed things long before I met you. You're just caught in the fallout. He headed toward the door. Dorian. He stopped. First time she'd used his name. Don't get yourself killed trying to fix this. I'll do my best. That's not comforting. It's the truth. He left her in the safe house with 2 guards and instructions that she was not to leave under any circumstances. Outside, his phone rang immediately. Marcus. Where are you? He demanded. Securing assets. Lena Marrow is an asset now. She's a liability I created. I'm containing it. By hiding her? By removing her from the board. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Celine met with Kozlov. I know. She's offering him your port operations. She doesn't control my port operations. She knows enough to make problems. Let her try. Dorian, I need you to do something for me. What? Set up a meeting, me and Kozlov, tonight. Are you insane? Probably. He'll kill you. He'll try. This is suicide. This is ending it. By walking into his territory? By taking away his leverage. How? By telling him the truth. Marcus laughed. No humor. The truth? About what? About Lena. About Celine. About why none of this matters. You think he'll believe you? I think he's a businessman, and I'm about to make him an offer. What kind of offer? The kind that ends this without bloodshed. And if he refuses, then we do it the old way. Static crackled. 1 week, Marcus said finally. You said give you 1 week. I know. This is day 4. I know. If this goes wrong, Sus, it won't. You can't promise that. You're right, but I'm doing it anyway. More silence. Then, I'll set it up. Neutral ground. Public place. No, his territory, his rules. That's insane. That's respect. He'll appreciate it. Or he'll murder you. Then you become the next problem. Marcus hung up. Dorian stared at his phone. 4 days ago, he'd been engaged to a beautiful woman, running a criminal empire with surgical precision, untouchable. Now he was hiding a terrified girl in a safe house, antagonizing his most dangerous competitor, and actively dismantling everything he'd built. All because he'd finally looked in a mirror and hated what he saw. The smart move would be to walk it all back, kill Celine, pay off Kozlov, disappear Lena, and return to business as usual. The smart move. The old move. Dorian climbed into his car and told the driver to take him to Ravencrest Estate. He had 6 hours before the meeting with Kozlov. 6 hours to figure out how to convince the most paranoid man in the city that Lena Marrow meant nothing. 6 hours to save a girl he barely knew from consequences he'd created. 6 hours before everything he'd built either transformed or burned to ash around him. The meeting was set for midnight at Kozlov's warehouse in the Port District. Dorian spent the 6 hours preparing like a man walking toward his own execution. He showered, dressed in a black suit that felt like armor, checked his weapon twice, even though he knew he'd have to surrender it at the door. Marcus arrived at Ravencrest Estate at 10 p.m., looking like he'd aged 5 years and 4 days. Last chance to call this off, he said. Not calling it off. You're walking into a room with a man who's wanted you dead for half a decade. I know who Viktor Kozlov is. Then you know he's not going to just talk. He will tonight. How can you be sure? Because I'm giving him something he wants more than my death. Marcus crossed his arms. Which is? Information. About what? About how vulnerable I actually am right now. Marcus stared. You're going to tell him the truth? Part of it? That's insane. That's strategy. He thinks I'm weak because of Lena. I'm going to confirm it. And then what? He just lets you walk out? Then I offer him a deal that makes killing me unnecessary. What kind of deal? Dorian buttoned his jacket. The kind that restructures territory without bloodshed. He'll never go for it. He will if the alternative is a war that costs him more than he gains. Marcus shook his head slowly. You've changed. I know. The old Dorian would have eliminated the threat. Quick, surgical, done. The old Dorian created this mess. And the new one thinks he can talk his way out? The new one thinks violence shouldn't be the first option. It's not the first option. It's the only option with men like Kozlov. Then I'll prove you wrong. Marcus pulled out his phone, showed Dorian a photo. Celine entering the same warehouse 2 hours ago. She's already there, Marcus said. Probably feeding him lies about how broken you are. Letter. You're not concerned? She doesn't know me as well as she thinks. And Kozlov? Doesn't know me at all. That's the advantage. They drove through empty streets toward the port. At this hour, the district belonged to rats and criminals. Sometimes those were the same thing. The warehouse loomed against the waterfront like a steel cathedral. Shipping containers stacked in organized chaos. Floodlights casting harsh shadows. 2 guards waited at the entrance. Weapons, one said. Dorian handed over his gun without argument. They patted him down thoroughly. Professional. Efficient. He's clean, the guard reported into his radio. Massive doors rolled open with mechanical precision. Inside, the warehouse had been converted into something between office and fortress. Concrete floors. Metal stairs leading to elevated offices with bulletproof glass. The smell of salt water and rust. Viktor Kozlov stood in the center of it all like a king in his castle. He was 63 years old and built like a tank. Gray hair, thick beard, scars visible on his knuckles. The kind of man who'd climbed from nothing through brutality and cunning. Beside him, Celine looked tiny, elegant, poisonous. Dorian Vale, Kozlov's accent was thick Russian. You have balls showing up here. You invited me. I did, but I expected you to refuse. Why would I refuse? Because smart men don't walk into enemy territory alone. I'm not alone. Dorian nodded toward Marcus, who stood near the entrance with calculated casualness. And we're not enemies. We're competitors. Kozlov laughed, deep, genuine. Competitors. Is that what we're calling it? That's what it is. I think you're delusional. I think you're pragmatic. That's why I'm here. Celine stepped forward. She wore black, looked like a widow dressed for a funeral. He's desperate, she told Kozlov. I told you. He's falling apart. Dorian ignored her completely, kept his attention on Kozlov. Your associate has been sharing interesting information, Kozlov said, about instability in your organization, about sudden changes in behavior. All true. The admission surprised everyone. You admit weakness? Kozlov asked. I admit change. Those aren't the same thing. Explain. I ended an engagement, made some personnel adjustments, started reevaluating priorities. Over a maid, Celine's voice dripped venom. Over realizing I'd become someone I couldn't live with anymore. Kozlov studied him carefully. You're serious? Yes. Most men in our position don't have that luxury. Most men in our position die young or in prison. Maybe we should reconsider the approach. That got Kozlov's attention. He gestured toward a table where chairs had been arranged. Sit. Tell me why you're really here. They sat across from each other like chess players before a match. Celine remained standing, hovering, predatory. I'm here to make a deal, Dorian said. What kind of deal? The kind that gives you what you want without starting a war neither of us can afford. I'm listening. You want my port operations, the shipping routes, the customs connections. Yes. Take them. Silence dropped like a bomb. Celine's eyes went wide. What? Kozlov leaned back slowly. Just like that? Just like that, with conditions. Of course there are conditions. 3. First, you leave my people alone. Everyone on my payroll transitions cleanly or exits with severance. No disappearances. Reasonable. Second, the transition happens over 6 months. Gradual. No power vacuum. We both make money while it stabilizes. Also reasonable. Third, Dorian's voice hardened. You leave Lena Marrow alone, completely, permanently. Kozlov's expression didn't change. The girl. Yes. Why does she matter? She doesn't. But your people made her think she does. That ends tonight. And if I refuse? Then we go to war. You'll probably win eventually, but it'll cost you 2 years and half your organization. Is that worth it? Kozlov stroked his beard thoughtfully. You'd give up prime territory over a girl you barely know. I'd restructure territory to avoid unnecessary violence. The girl is just where I draw the line. Most men draw lines with bullets. Most men are idiots. Kozlov laughed again. You really have changed. Does that matter? It matters that you're willing to sacrifice power for principle. That's rare in our world. It's necessary. I'm tired of the alternative. Celine couldn't contain herself anymore. This is insane. You're just giving him everything? I'm preventing a war. You're showing weakness. I'm showing evolution. It's the same thing. Dorian finally looked at her. No, it's not. Weakness is doing the same destructive thing over and over because you're too afraid to change. Strength is recognizing when the old way doesn't work anymore. That's coward philosophy. That's survival philosophy. Kozlov raised a hand. Enough! He studied Dorian with unsettling intensity. Let me understand. You're offering me prime territory, clean transition, continued profits. In exchange for what? Leaving one girl alone? And avoiding bloodshed. Why? Because I'm done building empires on corpses. Noble. Kozlov's tone made it unclear whether he meant it as compliment or insult. Also naive. Maybe. But I'm here making the offer anyway. And if I take it, if I agree to everything, what do you gain? Peace. That's not enough. It is for me now. Kozlov stood abruptly, walked to the window overlooking the port. Lights from ships created patterns on dark water. I've known men like you, he said without turning. Ruthless, brilliant, built empires through fear and strategy, but none of them ever stopped. They couldn't. The machine they created consumed them. I'm aware. So why do you think you're different? Because I finally realized the machine was eating me alive. Kozlov turned. His expression was unreadable. I accept your deal. Celine's face went white. What? I accept. Port operations. 6-month transition. The girl stays untouched. Victor, you can't be... I can be whatever I want. Kozlov's voice turned to ice. This deal is better than war. I'm a businessman, not a fanatic. But he's weak. You could take everything and lose half my organization doing it. No. Kozlov extended his hand toward Dorian. We have a deal. Dorian stood and shook it. The grip was firm, final. Papers will be drawn up by week's end, Kozlov said. Legal framework that keeps everyone protected. Agreed. And the girl? Gets her life back. Consider it done. Celine was shaking with rage. This is a mistake. Your opinion is noted. Kozlov dismissed her with a wave. You've served your purpose. Payment will be transferred by morning. Payment? Dorian looked at her. You sold information for money? I sold information for revenge. Celine's mask finally cracked completely. You humiliated me. Destroyed my reputation. Did you think I'd just disappear quietly? I thought you'd have more pride than to become a paid informant. Pride? She laughed, shrill, broken. You took my pride when you threw me out for a nobody. I removed you from my life because you showed me who you really were. And who are you, Dorian? Really? Beneath this sudden morality? Someone trying to be better. You'll never be better. You're a killer, a criminal. One decent act doesn't erase 20 years of blood. I know that. Then what's the point? The point is trying anyway. Celine grabbed her purse with shaking hands. You're going to regret this. When she betrays you. When she shows you she's just like everyone else. When you realize your precious conscience destroyed everything. Maybe. Definitely. She stormed toward the exit, stopped, looked back one final time. I did love you, she whispered. In my way. I know. But I love survival more. I know that too. She left. The warehouse felt larger without her poison filling it. Kozlov poured vodka into 2 glasses, offered one to Dorian. 2 unlikely alliances, he said. They drank. You surprise me, Kozlov admitted. I expected rage, pride, violence. I'm tired of violence. That's dangerous in our world. Our world is what's dangerous. Maybe it's time to change it. One person can't change an entire criminal ecosystem. One person can stop contributing to it. Kozlov studied him. You really mean this? The retirement? The reform? I mean it. What will you do after the transition? Honest question. Dorian didn't have an answer. Something different, he said finally. That's not a plan. It's the only one I have. Kozlov set down his glass. I'll give you advice from someone who's been in this world 40 years. I'm listening. Men like us don't retire. We don't reform. We don't get redemption arcs. Why not? Because the debts are too old, the sins too deep. You can change direction, but you can't change the past. I'm not trying to erase the past. I'm trying to avoid repeating it. Noble, but futile. We'll see. Kozlov smiled. Sad. Almost paternal. I hope you're right, for your sake, but I've watched too many men try to leave this life. It always catches them. Then I'll be the first it doesn't, or the last it kills. They shook hands again. Outside, Marcus was waiting by the car. His expression was unreadable. How bad? He asked. It's done. Deal's made. All of it? All of it. Marcus exhaled slowly. You really gave him the ports. I did. Do you know what that means? It means we stop bleeding. It means Lena goes home. It means this ends. It means you just surrendered prime territory. It means I just prevented a war. They climbed into this car. The driver pulled away from the warehouse. The organization isn't going to like this, Marcus said quietly. The organization will adapt. Some of them won't. Then they can leave. And if they don't leave peacefully, then we'll handle it. With what? Your newfound pacifism? Dorian looked at him. I'm trying to be better, not stupid. If someone forces violence, I'll respond, but I won't initiate it anymore. Marcus shook his head. You sound like a different person. I am a different person. Since when? 4 days ago? Since I watched someone get burned and realized I'd spent 20 years enabling that kind of cruelty. One incident changed everything? One incident made me see everything clearly. They drove in silence through empty streets. At Ravencrest Estate, Dorian went straight to his office and called the safe house. Put Lena on, he told the guard who answered. Rustling, muffled voices. Hello? Lena's voice was small, scared. It's over, Dorian said. What's over? The threat. The danger. You can go home. Silence. Lena? How? She whispered. I made a deal. You're off the board. Kozlov's people won't touch you. Just like that? Just like that. What did you give up? Nothing that matters. That's not an answer. It's the only one you need. More silence. Can I see my mother? She asked. First thing tomorrow. I'll have someone drive you to the hospital. And then? And then you live your life, however you want. What about you? What about me? What happens to you now? Dorian looked around his office, at the expensive furniture, the art on the walls, the empire reflected in every surface. I figure that out, he said. That's not a plan. It's the only one I have. He heard her almost laugh. Everyone keeps saying that to you, don't they? Yeah, maybe you should make an actual plan. Maybe. Dorian? Yeah? Thank you for keeping me safe. The words hit harder than they should have. Get some sleep, he said. Someone will be there at 8. He hung up before she could say anything else that might crack the armor he was barely holding together. The next morning arrived cold and bright. Dorian hadn't slept. He'd spent the night reviewing documents, preparing for the transition, making calls to people who needed to know the organization was restructuring. Not everyone took it well. At 7 a.m., Marcus showed up unannounced with an expression that meant serious problems. We have a situation, he said. What kind? The kind where 3 of your captains are calling for an emergency meeting. About? About you giving away the ports to Kozlov. Word travels fast. Too fast. Someone's talking. Who? Don't know yet, but by noon the whole organization will know you surrendered territory. I didn't surrender. I restructured. They won't see it that way. Then I'll explain it. They won't listen. They will if I make them. Marcus stepped closer. Dorian, listen to me. You're walking on glass right now. Half the organization thinks you've lost your mind. The other half thinks you've gone soft. Either way, you're vulnerable. So what do you suggest? Cancel the Kozlov deal. Take the ports back by force. Show everyone you're still the man they followed. No. Then you're going to lose control. Maybe I need to lose control. Maybe the control was the problem. Marcus's jaw clenched. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking clearly for the first time in years. No, you're thinking emotionally. That's different. Maybe emotion is what I needed. Emotion gets people killed. So does 20 years of cruelty. They stared at each other. I can't protect you from this, Marcus said finally. I'm not asking you to. If they come for you, then they come. I'll deal with it. How? With your conscience? With the truth. The truth? Marcus laughed, bitter. The truth is you gave away prime territory for a girl you don't know and a conscience you didn't have last week. That's not strength. That's suicide. Then I'll die honest. That's not good enough. It is for me. Marcus grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. Stopped. 20 years, he said without turning around. I've followed you 20 years. Through wars, through blood, through impossible situations. But this? He shook his head. I don't even recognize you anymore. Good. That's not a compliment. I know. Marcus left. Dorian stood alone in his office as morning light filtered through windows. He'd expected this. Known that changing course would have consequences. That people who'd built their lives on his ruthlessness wouldn't understand mercy. But he hadn't expected it to feel this isolating. At 8 a.m., his phone buzzed. The guard at the safe house. Sir, she's gone. Ice flooded Dorian's veins. What do you mean, gone? We went to wake her for transport. Room was empty. Window was forced open. When? Sometime between 3 and 6 a.m. You were supposed to be watching her. We were, but she... The guard stopped. Sir, she left a note. What does it say? It says, I can't be your redemption project. Don't look for me. Dorian's hand tightened around the phone until plastic creaked. Find her, he said. Sir, find her. Now. Use every resource. I want her location within the hour. Yes, sir. He hung up and immediately called the hospital where Lena's mother was receiving treatment. The nurse answered on the second ring. Patient services? How can I... This is Dorian Vale. I need to know if Lena Marrow has visited this morning. Typing sounds. Let me check. Yes, sir. She arrived at 6:30 a.m., currently in room 412 with her mother. Relief flooded through him. Don't let her leave. Excuse me? It's for her safety. Keep her there until I arrive. Sir, I can't just... I'm 10 minutes away. Please. Trust me. He hung up and grabbed his keys. The drive took 8 minutes. He burst through the hospital entrance and took stairs instead of waiting for elevators. 4th floor. Room 412. The door was open. Inside, Lena sat beside her mother's bed, holding her hand. The older woman was asleep. Tubes and monitors, the mechanical rhythm of medical equipment. Lena looked up when he entered. No surprise in her expression. I wondered how long it would take you to find me, she said quietly. You ran. I left. Same thing. No. Running implies I'm scared. I'm not scared. I'm done. Dorian stepped inside and closed the door carefully. Done with what? With being your project. Your proof that you can change. That's not what you are. Isn't it? She stood. You helped me because it made you feel better about yourself. That's fine. I took the money because my mother needed it, but I'm not going to spend the rest of my life being your evidence that you're not a monster. I never asked you to. You didn't have to. That's what this is. You save the poor girl. You prove you have a heart. You get to sleep at night. Meanwhile, I'm supposed to be grateful and quiet and proof that Dorian Vale can be redeemed. The accusation landed hard because part of it was true. That's not fair, he said. Fair? Lena's voice rose. You turned my life into a battlefield because you had a moment of conscience. People followed me, threatened me. I had to hide in a fortress like a prisoner, all because you decided to suddenly care about something. I was protecting you. No, you were protecting your feelings about hurting me. There's a difference. Dorian had no response to that. Lena's mother stirred slightly but didn't wake. She doesn't know who you are, Lena said, quieter now. I told her a scholarship came through, that everything was going to be okay. It is going to be okay. Because you made a deal with a criminal who was threatening me because of you. Yes. Do you see the problem here? I see that you're safe now. But for how long? Until you have another crisis of conscience? Until someone else decides I'm leverage? That won't happen. You can't promise that. She was right. Dorian looked at the woman in the bed. Lena's mother, dying slowly, eating up savings and hope in equal measure. What do you want? He asked. I want you to leave us alone. The money? Keep it. She needs it. But after that, forget we exist. I can't do that. Why not? Because you're right about everything. I did use you as proof I could change. I did put you in danger. I did turn your life into something you didn't choose. So stop. I am stopping. But first I need to make sure you're actually safe, that the deal holds, that no one else tries to use you to get to me. How long will that take? I don't know. Days? Weeks? Years? As long as it takes. Lena's expression hardened. I won't be your project. You're not a project. You're a person I hurt. I'm trying to fix that. You can't fix it. What happened, happened. All you can do now is leave. And if someone comes for you after I leave, then I'll deal with it. How? However I have to. Dorian studied her face. She looked older than 19, harder, like 4 days had aged her 4 years. You're stronger than I thought, he admitted. I had to be. You made sure of that. I'm sorry. I don't want your apology. I want my life back. You'll have it? When? Soon. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. She almost smiled. You say that a lot. I know. Lena sat back down beside her mother. She's going to wake up soon. I don't want her to see you here. Understood. And Dorian? He stopped at the door. Whatever you're doing, changing, reforming, finding your soul, do it away from us. We've paid enough for your redemption. The words cut deeper than any blade. Dorian nodded once and left. In the hallway, nurses moved between rooms. Machines beeped. Someone was crying softly behind a closed door. Normal hospital sounds. Normal life. Everything he'd never be part of again. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. Vale, we need to talk. Marcus's voice was tight, controlled. About? About the meeting that just happened without you. What meeting? Your 3 captains plus 6 lieutenants. They met at the South Warehouse an hour ago. And? And they voted. Unanimous. Voted on what? On whether you're fit to lead. Ice spread through Dorian's chest. What was the verdict? You're out. Effective immediately. They can't just, they can. And they did. You gave away too much too fast. Made too many changes without consultation. They're calling it temporary leadership instability. Temporary? Until you prove you're back to normal. Or until they decide you never will be. Who's taking over? Silence. Marcus. Who's taking over? They asked me to. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. And you said? I said I'd consider it. That's not a no. It's not a yes either. But you're considering it. What choice do I have, Dorian? You're dismantling everything we built. Someone has to keep it from completely falling apart. So you're going to take it from me. I'm going to prevent a war, the same thing you claim to be doing. That's not the same. Isn't it? Dorian leaned against the hospital wall. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. How long do I have? They're giving you 72 hours to either reverse the Kozlov deal or step aside peacefully. And if I do neither? Then they remove you by force. You'd let that happen? I'd lead it. To keep casualties minimal. You'd lead my execution. I'd lead your removal. Don't be dramatic. Same thing in our world. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I'm trying to save your life, he said finally. By taking everything I built? By preventing you from destroying it. Maybe it deserves to be destroyed. That's not your decision alone anymore. It was my decision alone when I built it. And now it's bigger than you, employs hundreds, feeds families. You don't get to torch it because you suddenly grew a conscience. So I'm supposed to go back to being a monster? You're supposed to go back to being a leader. Those aren't the same thing. In our world, they are. Dorian closed his eyes. I can't go back. Then step aside. And let you become what I was? I'll do what needs to be done, same as always. Without the guilt? Without the paralysis. That's not strength, Marcus. That's just refusing to evolve. And your evolution is destroying everything. They were talking in circles. Both right, both wrong. 72 hours, Marcus said. After that, all bets are off. He hung up. Dorian stood in the hospital hallway as his world collapsed around him. In 4 days, he'd lost his fiancée, his empire, his oldest friend, all because he'd chosen decency over power. The smart move would be to fight back, reassert control, prove he was still the ruthless strategist they'd followed for 20 years. The smart move. The old move. His phone buzzed again. Text from the safe house guard. She left this behind. A photo loaded. The note Lena had written, but not the full note. The guard had only read him the first line. The second line said, "But if you're serious about changing, prove it by letting me go." The third line, "Real redemption doesn't need witnesses." Dorian stared at the words until they blurred. She was right. He'd been using her as evidence, as proof, as justification. Real change didn't need validation. It just needed to happen. He walked out of the hospital into cold morning air. Somewhere behind him, Lena sat with her dying mother. Safe. Protected. Free of him. Somewhere across the city, his organization was planning his removal. Somewhere in the dark, Celine was probably celebrating his downfall. And here he stood between who he'd been and who he wanted to become, with no clear path forward. Just choices. Hard choices. Impossible choices. The kind that defined what a person was really made of when everything else was stripped away. Dorian climbed into his car. "Where to, sir?" the driver asked. Good question. He could go to Ravencrest Estate and prepare for war. Could fight to keep what he'd built. Could prove he was still dangerous. Or he could walk away completely. Let Marcus have it. Let the Empire survive without him. Or he could find a third option nobody expected. "Drive," Dorian said. "Where?" "Anywhere. I need to think." They pulled into traffic. Dorian watched the city pass outside the window. Millions of people living normal lives, going to work, raising families, existing without empires or violence or blood money. For the first time in 20 years, he envied them, not for their safety, for their freedom. His phone buzzed one more time. "Kozlov. I hear you're having problems." Dorian typed back, "Nothing I can't handle. That's not what I hear. Your organization is fracturing, temporary, or permanent. Either way, our deal stands. I'm a man of my word. Good to know. But Dorian, if you fall, make sure you fall quietly. I don't need instability disrupting business. Understood. Good luck. You'll need it." The conversation ended. Dorian stared at his phone. 72 hours to reverse course or lose everything. 3 days to choose between power and principle. 3 days to decide if redemption was worth the cost. The car kept driving through morning traffic, while Dorian Vale sat in the back seat and finally admitted the truth he'd been avoiding since the moment Celine threw boiling tea at a terrified girl. He wasn't trying to change, he was already changed. The question now was whether he'd survive what came next, or whether transformation required complete destruction first. Either way, there was no going back. The die was cast. The choice was made. Now he just had to live, or die, with the consequences. The car drove in circles for 3 hours while Dorian sat in the back seat and watched his empire burn through a series of increasingly frantic phone calls. First came the accountant. 3 offshore accounts had been frozen. Someone with access codes was moving money. Then the lawyer. Federal investigators were suddenly asking questions about port operations. Someone had fed them information. Then security. 2 warehouses had been breached overnight. Inventory missing. Guards reporting directly to Marcus now instead of him. The coup wasn't coming in 72 hours. It was already happening. "Take me to the South Warehouse," Dorian told the driver. "Sir, that's where—" "I know where it is. Drive." They arrived at noon. The building looked ordinary from outside. Corrugated metal, loading docks. Nothing to suggest it was the nerve center of his operation. 4 guards stood at the entrance. Men who'd worked for Dorian for years. They didn't move aside when he approached. "I need to see Marcus," Dorian said. "He's in a meeting," the nearest guard replied. Then interrupted. "Can't do that, sir." The formality in "sir" was pure mockery. "Since when do you take orders from Marcus instead of me?" "Since about 6 hours ago." "On whose authority?" "The council." "What council?" "The one that voted this morning." Dorian's jaw clenched. "Let me through." "Can't do that." "You're refusing a direct order?" "I'm following current chain of command." "I'm still your boss." "That's being disputed." Dorian stepped closer, close enough to see the uncertainty flicker in the guard's eyes. "You've worked for me 7 years, Rick. You really going to stop me over a disputed vote?" Rick's hand moved toward his weapon, not drawing, just ready. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," he said. Behind Dorian, his driver shifted nervously. "Call Marcus," Dorian said. "Tell him I'm here. He'll see me." Rick spoke into his radio, low conversation. Then, "He says you can come up, alone." "Fine." "And sir, you'll need to leave your weapon." "I'm not armed. We'll check anyway." They patted him down thoroughly, professional, impersonal, like he was a stranger instead of the man who'd employed them. Inside, the warehouse felt different, colder, like the building itself knew power had shifted. Dorian climbed metal stairs to the second-floor offices. His footsteps echoed too loud in the cavernous space. Marcus stood in what used to be a storage room converted into a conference area. Maps on the walls, laptops open. 8 men around a table, the captains and lieutenants who'd voted that morning. They all looked up when Dorian entered. No one stood. No one greeted him. Marcus gestured to an empty chair at the far end of the table. "Sit." "I'll stand." "Suit yourself." The casual dismissal stung worse than hostility would have. Dorian scanned the faces around the table. Men he'd promoted, protected, made wealthy. Now they looked at him like he was a problem to solve. "So this is how it happens," he said. 20 years and I get a coup in a warehouse." "This isn't a coup," Marcus replied. "It's an intervention." Semantics. No. A coup would be violent. We're trying to avoid that. How generous. "Sit down, Dorian. Let's talk like adults." Adults don't stage hostile takeovers behind each other's backs. Adults also don't give away prime territory without consulting their organization. The accusation landed in front of everyone. Public. Intentional. Dorian finally sat. "I made a strategic decision to avoid bloodshed." "You made an emotional decision that's costing us millions," one of the captains, Chen, mid-40s, scar across his jaw, said. "The Kozlov deal cuts our revenue by 40%. In the short term. Long term. Long term, we're weakened, vulnerable. Every competitor in the city is watching to see if you've gone soft." "I restructured an alliance. That's not soft." "You surrendered leverage," another captain, Williams, younger, ambitious, cut in. "Because of a girl." "I prevented a war." "You prevented nothing." Williams slammed his hand on the table. "You just delayed it. Kozlov sees weakness now. He'll push harder. Take more. You opened the door." "That's not..." "And Celine," Chen again. "You dumped a major alliance over a servant spilling tea. Do you understand how that looks?" "It looks like I have standards." "It looks like you're unstable." The word hung heavy. Dorian's hands clenched beneath the table. "I made decisions based on changing priorities." "Without consulting us," Marcus said quietly. "That's the problem. Not what you decided, how you decided it. I've made unilateral decisions for 20 years. And we followed because they made sense, strategic sense. This?" Marcus gestured vaguely. "This is something else. This is evolution. This is crisis." "Same thing sometimes." Marcus leaned forward. "Dorian, listen to me. I've known you since we were both nobody. Watched you build this from nothing. But these last 4 days, I don't recognize you." "Good. That's not..." Marcus stopped, breathed. "You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking clearly for the first time in years." "No, you're feeling. That's different. And in our world, feelings get people killed." "Maybe our world is the problem." The statement shocked everyone. "What does that mean?" Chen asked. "It means I'm tired of building empires on fear, on violence, on making people like Lena terrified in their own lives." "Who the hell is Lena?" Williams demanded. "The maid. The girl who got burned. And she matters more than this organization? More than the hundreds of people who depend on us? She matters as much. That's insane. That's humanity." Williams laughed, sharp, mean. "Humanity? You're lecturing us about humanity? You've ordered hits, destroyed families, ruined lives. And suddenly one girl cries and you're reformed?" "One girl got hurt, and I realized I'd become someone I can't live with." "So change on your own time." Williams stood abruptly. "Don't drag the rest of us into your existential crisis. The organization is mine. My choices affect everyone. We're yours. Marcus corrected quietly. Past tense. The words hit like bullets. You're taking it, Dorian said. We're protecting it. From you, until you stabilize. And if I don't? Then it becomes permanent. Dorian looked around the table. 7 men avoiding his eyes. 1, Marcus, meeting them directly. So this is a hostage situation, Dorian said. Behave or lose everything. This is protecting what we built together, Marcus replied. You're not the only one with skin in this game. I built this? We built this. Marcus's voice hardened. You designed it, but we executed it, bled for it, killed for it. It belongs to all of us now. So you're stealing it. We're saving it. From me. From your self-destruction. Dorian stood slowly. And if I refuse to accept this? The temperature in the room dropped. Then we do this the hard way, Chen said. Which is? Which is we remove you, permanently. You'd kill me. If necessary. Dorian looked at Marcus. You'd let that happen? Marcus's expression was unreadable. I'd prefer you walk away peacefully. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. Dorian almost laughed, the phrase he'd been using for days thrown back at him. So I have 2 choices, he said. Reverse the Kozlov deal and go back to being who I was, or leave and lose everything. Those are the options, Marcus confirmed. There's a third option. Which is? I fight back. The statement electrified the room. That would be a mistake, Marcus said carefully. Would it? You said it yourself. I built this. I know every operation, every contact, every pressure point. And we know you know, which is why we've already changed access codes, moved assets, isolated your loyal people. You've been planning this since yesterday, since the Kozlov deal was announced. The betrayal cut deeper than Dorian expected, not because it happened, but because it happened so efficiently. Did you ever believe in what I was trying to do? He asked Marcus. I believed you were having a breakdown. That's not the same thing. In practice it is. Dorian walked toward the door, stopped, looked back. You're making a mistake, he said. We're preventing one, Chen replied. No. You're perpetuating a system that destroys everything it touches, and eventually it'll destroy you too. Big words from someone who just lost everything. I haven't lost everything yet. Yes, Marcus said quietly. You have. The finality in his voice was absolute. Dorian left without another word. Outside, the guards watched him descend the stairs, no longer his men, just obstacles. His driver waited by the car looking nervous. Where to, sir? Dorian didn't answer immediately. He stood in the parking lot watching clouds roll across gray sky. 72 hours had become 72 minutes. The organization had moved faster than he expected, cut him out systematically. Marcus had been planning this for days, maybe longer. Smart strategy. Exactly what Dorian would have done, which meant countering it required doing something unexpected. Hospital, he said. Now. Which one? Where Lena's mother is being treated. Sir, she told you to leave her alone. I know what she told me. Drive. They arrived 20 minutes later. Dorian took stairs to the 4th floor again. Room 412. Door closed this time. He knocked softly. No answer. He knocked again. The door opened. Lena stood there looking exhausted, eyes red, face pale. I told you, she started. I need your help. Dorian cut her off. What? I need your help. And I have about an hour before people with guns come looking for me. Lena stared. What happened? I lost everything. My organization, my allies, my protection. I'm alone. So go to the police. I can't. I've committed too many crimes. The moment I involve authorities, I go to prison for life. Then what do you want from me? Information about Celine. Lena's expression hardened. Why would I know anything about her? Because you worked in the house. You saw things, heard things. Staff always knows more than they let on. I worked there 6 weeks, and Celine lived there 8 months. She had routines, patterns, weaknesses. Why do you need... Lena stopped. Understanding dawned. You're going after her. She's the one who started this, fed information to my enemies, made deals with Kozlov. If I can prove she's still actively trying to destroy me, I can use that leverage. To do what? To convince my organization that the real threat isn't my conscience. It's her vendetta. Lena shook her head a bit. That's insane. It's all I have. Find someone else. There is no one else. Everyone I trusted just turned on me. That's not my problem. I know. But you're the only person in this city who doesn't have a reason to lie to me right now. I have a reason to hate you. Fair. But you don't have a reason to help the people trying to kill me. Lena looked back into the room where her mother was sleeping. Machines beeped steadily. If I help you, she said quietly, are you done after? Done with us? Completely? Yes. Promise? I promise. She studied his face, looking for the lie, the manipulation, found only desperation. Fine, she said, but not here, downstairs. Coffee shop, 10 minutes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. She closed the door. Dorian went to the hospital coffee shop and bought 2 coffees he didn't want. His hands shook slightly. Adrenaline. Fear. The cocktail of someone whose life was actively falling apart. Lena appeared 8 minutes later. She'd pulled her hair back, splashed water on her face. They sat in a corner booth away from other patients and visitors. Talk fast, she said. My mother could wake up any minute. Celine, tell me everything you noticed. About? Patterns? Who she called? Who visited? Anything unusual? Lena thought. She had a lot of phone calls, always in her office with the door closed. That's normal? But twice I heard her speaking Russian. Dorian's attention sharpened. You're sure? I took Russian in high school. I'm not fluent, but I recognize the language. What was she saying? No idea, but she sounded angry both times. When was this? First time about 3 months ago. Second time maybe 6 weeks ago. 3 months. That was before Kozlov became a problem. Before Dorian had any reason to suspect Selene of anything. She was planning this long term, he muttered. Planning what? Positioning herself with my enemies while pretending to be my ally. Why? Insurance, in case I ever became a liability. So she was always using you. Apparently. Lena sipped her coffee. There's something else. What? She had a safe. In her closet. Behind the shoes. Small one. Digital lock. I never knew about that. She was careful about it, but I saw her open it once when I was bringing laundry. She didn't realize I was there. Did you see what was inside? Flash drives. Documents. Maybe cash. It was only a glimpse. Dorian's mind raced. That safe probably has copies of everything, leverage on me, proof of operations, everything she'd need to destroy me completely. So if I can get access to it, I can prove she's been planning betrayal for months. That makes her the liability, not me. How do you get access? She's not at the estate anymore. She took everything when she left, including that safe. Then where is it? Good question. Celine would have gone somewhere she felt secure. Somewhere with protection, somewhere Dorian couldn't easily reach, which meant either Kozlov's territory or her father, Dorian said suddenly. What? Her father, Viroz. He controls half the Port Authority, has a compound in the hills. She'd go there for protection. Then how do you get to it? I don't know yet. They sat in silence. This is insane, Lena said finally. You're talking about breaking into a crime lord's compound to steal evidence from your ex-fiancée. Yes. You'll get killed. Probably. Then why do it? Because the alternative is worse. Which is accepting that 20 years of building something means nothing. That one choice to be decent destroys everything. That change is impossible. Lena looked at him. Really looked. You're serious about this. The changing. The reform. Yes, even though it's cost you everything? Especially because of that. That's either brave or stupid. Probably both. She almost smiled. You say that a lot. I know. Lena finished her coffee, set down the cup. There's a delivery entrance to the Viro compound, east side. They get wine shipments twice a week, Tuesday and Friday. How do you know that? Celine complained about it once, said the trucks were too loud. Today's Thursday. So tomorrow you could potentially get in with a delivery truck. You're helping me plan a break-in? I'm giving you information. What you do with it is your problem. Why? Because my mother is alive because of your money. And because... She stopped. Because maybe you actually mean it. About changing. And the world could use more people who mean it. Even if I'm terrible at it? Especially then. Perfect people don't inspire change. Broken people trying anyway do. The honesty hit harder than any accusation. Thank you, Dorian said. Don't thank me. Just don't die doing something stupid. I'll try. And after? You keep your promise? You leave us alone? I keep my promise. She stood. Good luck. You'll need it. She left before he could respond. Dorian sat alone in the coffee shop with cold coffee and a plan that was 60% suicide. But it was something. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts. Most were compromised now. Marcus had probably isolated anyone loyal to Dorian specifically. But there was one person who might still help. He dialed. 3 rings. Valet. The voice was gruff, suspicious. Heard you had a bad day. That's an understatement, Sal. Salvatore Russo. Arms dealer. Off-books operative. One of the few people in the city who didn't take sides in criminal politics. He sold to everyone. Helped no one. Perfect for what Dorian needed. I need gear, Dorian said. Tonight. What kind of gear? The kind that gets someone into a secure compound undetected. That's expensive. I know. And risky. If this is connected to your current situation, it is. Then I'm not interested. I'll pay triple. Silence. Triple. Triple. Cash? Wire transfer. Untraceable. More silence. What are you planning? Sal asked. Something probably stupid. That's not reassuring. It's honest. Sal laughed once. Yeah, that's your new thing, isn't it? Honesty. Apparently. How's that working out? Terribly. And yet you're doubling down. Seems like the only option. Or the worst one. Also possible. Sal was quiet for a long moment. I can have equipment ready by midnight. But Vale? Yeah? Whatever you're doing, make sure you know the exit strategy. Because if you survive the infiltration and can't get out, all the equipment in the world won't save you. Understood. And one more thing. What? If this goes wrong, I never heard from you. Agreed. They finalized details and hung up. Dorian had 16 hours to plan an infiltration. To figure out how to get into the Vero compound, locate Celine's safe, extract evidence, and get out alive. While being hunted by his own organization, while having no backup, while running on no sleep and pure desperation. The odds were astronomical, but the alternative was surrendering, going back to being who he was. Accepting that change was impossible, and empires built on fear were the only reality. He couldn't accept that, even if it killed him. He spent the afternoon in a motel on the edge of the city, cheap, anonymous, the kind of place that didn't ask for ID or check backgrounds. He paid cash and locked himself in room 217. Then he started planning. The Vero compound sat on 15 acres in the hills overlooking the city. Main house, guest houses, security buildings, gardens, everything behind walls topped with cameras and guards. Getting in would be hard. Getting out would be harder. Getting out alive would be nearly impossible. But the wine delivery entrance was real. He confirmed it through satellite imagery on his laptop. East wall, service road, loading area separated from main house by about 200 yards of garden. If he could get into a delivery truck, he could get inside the walls. After that, he'd be improvising. His phone rang at 8 p.m. Unknown number. He answered cautiously. Yes? It's Marcus. Ice flooded through him. How did you get this number? I've always had this number. It's one of your burners. I set up your communications, remember? What do you want? To warn you. About? About Chen and Williams. They're not content with just removing you from power. Meaning they want you dead, permanently. And you? I want you gone, not dead. What's the difference? The difference is I'm giving you 12 hours to disappear. After that, I can't protect you. Why would you protect me at all? Because we were friends once, before all this. We're not friends anymore? No, but I don't want your blood on my hands either. How noble. It's practical. Your death would raise questions, draw attention. Better if you just vanish. Into what? Witness protection? Exile? Into whatever life you can build without criminal empires. And if I refuse? Then Chen will find you, and he won't be as sentimental as me. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Dorian walked to the motel window. Cars passed on the highway. Normal people going to normal places. I'm not disappearing, he said. Then you're committing suicide. Maybe. Or maybe I'm finishing what I started. Which is? Proving that change is possible. Marcus laughed, bitter. You can't prove that dead. Then I'll try not to die. Dorian, thank you for the warning, but I'm not running. Then you're a fool. Probably. Definitely. Goodbye, Marcus. Wait. Dorian hung up. He destroyed the burner phone and pulled out another. Final preparations. At midnight, he met Sal in a parking garage downtown. The equipment was basic. Black clothes, climbing gear, lockpicks, small tablet with hacking software. Nothing military grade. Nothing that would draw attention. This is it? Dorian asked. You said undetected. Heavy gear gets noticed. Light and fast is your only chance. What about weapons? I included a knife. Anything more, and you're asking for a firefight you can't win. Sal handed over a duffel bag. The tablet has access codes for standard security systems. May or may not work on VRO's setup, but it's better than nothing. Thanks. Don't thank me. Just don't mention where you got this if you're captured. I won't be captured. Everyone says that. They parted ways. Dorian spent the rest of the night memorizing the compound layout, planning routes, identifying weaknesses. The wine delivery was scheduled for 2 p.m. Friday. He needed to be in position by 1 p.m., which gave him 13 hours to prepare for the most dangerous thing he'd ever attempted. Not because the infiltration was technically hard, because if it failed, he had nowhere left to run. Morning arrived gray and cold. Dorian showered, dressed in dark clothes, checked his gear one final time. His hands were steady, his breathing was calm. That was good. Panic killed more people than bullets in situations like this. At noon, he stole a contractor van from a hardware store parking lot, added magnetic signs to the sides, legitimate looking enough to pass casual inspection. He drove toward the hills. The Viro compound sat behind stone walls that looked decorative but were reinforced steel underneath. Security cameras every 30 feet. Guards walking regular patrols. Dorian parked half a mile away and approached on foot through the tree line. At 1:45 p.m., the wine delivery truck arrived. He waited in the shadows until it passed through the main gate, then moved quickly along the wall toward the service entrance. The truck stopped at a loading dock. 2 workers emerged from the compound to help unload. Dorian's window was closing. He climbed the wall where cameras had a blind spot, pulled himself over, dropped into shadows on the other side. Inside the compound. No alarms, no shouts. So far, so good. He moved through gardens, staying low. The main house loomed ahead. Security was lighter here than at the front. Most attention focused outward. They weren't expecting infiltration from within. Mistake. He reached a service door, used the lockpicks. 3 minutes of careful work, and the lock clicked open. Inside, the house was quiet. Staff moving through distant corridors. Normal afternoon activity. Dorian moved like a ghost. Years of practice. He'd broken into places before, stolen information, intimidated witnesses. But this time felt different. This time, he was the hunted one. Celine's room was on the 2nd floor, east wing. He'd visited the compound twice during the engagement, remembered the layout. He climbed service stairs, checked corners, avoided sight lines. 2nd floor hallway was empty, east wing, 3rd door on the right. The room was locked. He picked it faster this time. 90 seconds. Inside, Celine's temporary quarters looked exactly like her. Elegant, cold, controlled. He started searching. Closet first. Behind shoes like Lena described. Nothing. Checked under the bed. Behind furniture. Inside drawers. Nothing. Panic started creeping in. Maybe Celine had moved the safe. Maybe it was somewhere else in the compound. Maybe... Wait. Behind a full-length mirror in the corner, barely visible gap between mirror and wall. He moved the mirror carefully. There. Small digital safe, same one Lena described. Dorian pulled out the tablet. Ran the security bypass program. The screen flickered, code scrolled. 5 minutes. 10. Come on. Footsteps in the hallway outside. Dorian froze. 2 people. Talking quietly. Getting closer. The tablet beeped softly. Safe lock disengaged. The door opened. Dorian grabbed the contents, flash drives, documents, photographs, and shoved them into his jacket. The footsteps stopped outside the room. He moved toward the window. Second floor, 15-foot drop to gardens below. The door handle turned. Dorian opened the window as quietly as possible. The door swung open. He dropped. Landed hard in flower beds. Pain shot through his ankle. "Hey!" someone shouted from above. "Intruder!" Alarms blared instantly. Dorian ran. His ankle screamed, but he pushed through pain. Across gardens, toward the east wall. Guards appeared from everywhere, shouting, running. Gunfire cracked. Bullets tore into dirt near his feet. He reached the wall. Started climbing. More shots. One grazed his shoulder. Hot pain. He pulled himself over the top. Dropped to the other side. More guards. Coming from the main gate. He ran into the tree line. Branches tore at his face. Thorns ripped his clothes. Behind him, dogs barked. They'd released pursuit animals. Perfect. Dorian pushed harder, reached the stolen van, threw himself inside. Engine turned over. He floored it. Guards appeared in the rear view, shooting. The van's back window shattered. He took a corner too fast, nearly rolled, kept going. 3 miles. 5. 10. Finally, no one behind him. He ditched the van in an industrial area and transferred everything to another stolen car he'd prepared that morning. His shoulder was bleeding. Ankle was swelling. Every breath hurt. But he had the evidence. Whatever was on those flash drives could prove Celine had been planning his destruction for months. Could prove to Marcus and the organization that the real threat wasn't his conscience. It was her vendetta. He drove to a different motel, locked himself in another anonymous room, plugged in the first flash drive. Files loaded, documents, spreadsheets, audio recordings. He started reading, and with each file his blood ran colder. Because Celine hadn't just been planning to destroy him. She'd been documenting every crime, every operation, every murder, for months. Building a complete case that could send not just him but his entire organization to prison for life. And she'd already sent copies to federal investigators. The raids would come within days, maybe hours. Everything was over, not just his leadership, the entire empire. Everyone would fall, including Marcus, Chen, Williams, everyone who'd betrayed him. They just didn't know it yet. Dorian sat in the motel room, staring at evidence of his own destruction. Celine had won. Completely. Totally. His phone buzzed. Marcus. He answered. "You need to see this," Marcus said. His voice was tight, panicked. "See what?" "Federal search warrants. They're hitting every property, every account, every operation." "When?" "Now. They're executing them now." "How did they—" "Celine. She gave them everything." In the background, Dorian could hear chaos. Shouting. Sirens. "Where are you?" Marcus asked. "Somewhere safe." "There is no safe. They have everything. Recordings. Documents. 20 years of operations." "I know." "You know?" Marcus's voice rose. "How do you know?" "Because I'm looking at the evidence right now." Silence. "You have it?" Marcus whispered. "I have copies. She already gave the originals to the feds." "Then why?" Marcus stopped, understanding. "You broke into the Vero compound." "Yes." "You insane son of a—" Sirens got louder on Marcus's end. "I have to go. They're here. They're raiding the warehouse." "Marcus." "We're done. You hear me? All of us. 20 years gone because you—" The line went dead. Dorian sat in silence, listening to nothing. Outside, the city continued living. Unaware that an empire had just fallen. Unaware that dozens of criminals would soon be arrested. Unaware that Dorian Vale's organization was being dismantled by federal agents at this exact moment. He should feel something: guilt, remorse, satisfaction. Instead, he just felt empty. This was what change cost. Complete destruction. Everything burned to ash, everyone caught in the flames. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He answered. "Hello, Dorian." Celine's voice dripped poison. "How does it feel?" "You destroyed everything." "I destroyed what you built on blood and fear. Don't pretend it was noble." "I never said it was noble, but you destroyed people who trusted you." "They trusted a monster. I did them a favor." "By sending them to prison?" "By ending it. The violence, the corruption. It was going to end eventually. I just made it happen." "You did this because I dumped you. I did this because you showed me mercy as weakness, and weakness deserves to be punished." "That's insane!" "That's justice. Real justice. Not your self-serving redemption arc." Dorian closed his eyes. "What do you want?" "I want you to know that your precious conscience destroyed everyone you ever cared about. Marcus, your captains, everyone. They're all going to prison because you decided to grow a heart. They're going to prison because you betrayed them. Same result. Not the same thing. Tell them that in court." She hung up. Dorian sat motionless. Everything he'd built, gone. Everyone he'd worked with, arrested. His entire world collapsed. And all because he'd chosen to help one terrified girl. The irony was suffocating. His phone buzzed one more time. Text message, Lena. "My mother started treatment today. She's responding well. Thank you." 3 sentences, simple, honest. And somehow in the middle of total devastation, they were the only thing that mattered. Because while his empire burned, while federal agents arrested everyone he'd ever worked with, while Celine celebrated his destruction, one woman was alive who wouldn't have been otherwise. One act of decency and 20 years of cruelty. It didn't balance the scales, didn't erase the blood, didn't make him good. But it was something, and maybe that was enough. Or maybe he was just desperately trying to find meaning in catastrophic failure. Either way, there was no going back now. The empire was gone. The life was over. All that remained was figuring out who Dorian Vale could become, when everything he'd ever been had finally burned completely to ash. Dorian sat in the motel room watching news coverage of the raids on a laptop screen that flickered with every arrest. His organization, his empire, his entire world being dragged into federal custody, one person at a time. Marcus Chen appeared on screen in handcuffs. Face blank, no emotion. Just the resignation of someone who knew this day would come eventually. Williams fought the agents. They slammed him against a car hood, read him his rights while he screamed about lawyers and due process. Chen went quietly, dignified even in defeat. Dorian watched it all with something that felt like grief but tasted like relief. His shoulder still bled through the makeshift bandage he'd wrapped around it. His ankle had swollen to twice its normal size. Every breath sent sharp pain through his ribs where he'd landed wrong coming off that wall. But he was alive and free. For now. The flash drive sat on the cheap motel desk like evidence of his entire life. 20 years of crime condensed into digital files. Celine had been meticulous. Audio recordings of conversations that could never be explained away. Financial documents showing money laundering through shell corporations. Even photographs of meetings with politicians and corrupt officials. Everything. She'd documented everything. And then she'd handed it to federal investigators like a gift wrapped in his destruction. His phone rang. He almost didn't answer. Unknown number. Probably more bad news, but something made him pick up anyway. Dorian Vale? A woman's voice, professional, clipped. Depends who's asking. Special Agent Sarah Reeves, FBI. I'd like to talk. His hand tightened on the phone. I don't think I should be talking to you without a lawyer. Probably not. But I'm not calling about charges. I'm calling about a deal. What kind of deal? The kind where you help us fill in gaps in the evidence we received. In exchange, we consider your cooperation when determining charges. You mean I testify against everyone I ever worked with? I mean you tell the truth about operations we can't fully prove yet. Yes. Dorian laughed. No humor in it. And in exchange for betraying everyone, what? Witness protection? Reduced sentence? Potentially both. That's not much of a deal. It's better than 20 to life in federal prison. Is it, though? Silence on the line, then. You sound like someone who's already decided. Decided what? That you deserve whatever punishment comes. The accuracy of that statement hit hard. Maybe I do, Dorian said. Maybe. But punishment and justice aren't always the same thing. Deep thoughts from a federal agent. Practical thoughts from someone who's seen this pattern before. Powerful people fall. They either fight and make it worse, or they cooperate and try to minimize damage. I'm not powerful anymore. I'm just tired. Then make this easier on everyone. Tell us what we need to know. Help us close cases that have been open for years. And in exchange, I get to live with being a snitch. In exchange, you get to live, period. Dorian looked at the news coverage again. More arrests, more people he'd worked with being destroyed. I need time to think, he said. You have 24 hours. After that, the offer expires and we move forward with maximum charges on everyone we arrested, including you once we find you. You don't know where I am. Not yet, but we will. You're good at hiding, Mr. Vale, but we're better at finding. She hung up. Dorian set the phone down and stared at his reflection in the dark laptop screen. 24 hours to decide between cooperation and prison, between betrayal and loyalty to people who'd already betrayed him, between destroying everyone who'd followed him and trying to protect them even now. The choice should have been obvious, but nothing about the last 5 days had been obvious. He packed up the flash drives, the laptop, everything that connected him to this room, left cash on the nightstand for the damage, walked out into cold afternoon air that smelled like rain coming. His car was parked 3 blocks away. Different stolen vehicle, different plates. He'd been rotating them every few hours. He drove with no destination, just movement, just the illusion of control when everything had already spiraled past any hope of steering. The city passed outside the windows. People going about normal lives, shopping, working, existing without the weight of empires collapsing around them. He envied them, not for their ignorance, for their freedom. His phone buzzed. Text message. Lena again. Are you okay? News is showing raids. Your name is everywhere. He shouldn't respond, shouldn't drag her deeper into this. But he typed back anyway. I'm fine. Stay away from the news. Focus on your mother. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Where are you? Somewhere safe. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. The dots appeared one more time, then stopped. No response came. Smart girl. She was learning to let go. He drove to the industrial waterfront. Empty warehouses, rusted shipping containers, the smell of salt water and decay. This was where it had started, 20 years ago. A younger Dorian making deals with dangerous people, building something from nothing through violence and cunning. He'd been so sure then, so certain that power was the only thing that mattered, that fear was the only currency worth holding, that weakness deserved to be punished. Now he just felt old. His phone rang again. Not a number this time. A name, Victor Kozlov. Dorian answered. I'm surprised you're calling. Surprised? Kozlov's accent was thick with amusement. Why? We made a deal. The deal's worthless now. My organization doesn't exist anymore. True, but interesting development, yes? That's one word for it. Your woman, Celine, she destroyed everything. Ex-fiancée and yes. Impressive, cold, efficient. I respect this. I don't? Of course not. You are victim. But from outside? Kozlov laughed. Beautiful strategy. She played long game, documented everything, waited for perfect moment, then burned it all. Glad someone appreciates it. I do, which is why I call. To gloat? To offer opportunity. Dorian's attention sharpened. What kind of opportunity? You are smart, man, capable, ruthless when necessary. But now you try to be a better person, yes? Something like that. This is admirable. Stupid, but admirable. Thanks. I have proposition. You want out of criminal life. I respect this. But you have skills, connections, knowledge. These things have value. What are you suggesting? Consulting, legal consulting. Help me restructure operations to be more legitimate. You understand both worlds now, criminal and ethical. This is rare. You want me to help you go legitimate? Parts of business? Yes. Not all. But some. Enough to protect from federal attention. Why would I help you do that? Because you need money, need purpose, need proof that change is possible not just for you, but for system you help build. The logic was twisted, but not entirely wrong. And if I refuse? Dorian asked. Then you refuse. I find someone else. You disappear into whatever life you build from ashes. No hard feelings. Just like that? Just like that. I am businessman, not emotional. Dorian watched waves lap against concrete pylons. I need time to think. Of course, but not too much time. Opportunity expires when federal investigation expands. Understood. One more thing, Dorian. What? The girl, Lena. She is safe, yes? Yes. Good. I keep my word. No one touches her. This I promise. Thank you. Do not thank me. Is business. Promises kept are reputation maintained. Kozlov hung up. Dorian sat in the car watching the water and trying to figure out if he'd just been offered salvation or damnation. Help Kozlov go legitimate and maybe prove that change was possible even for people like them, or walk away completely and try to build something new from nothing. Both options felt impossible. Both options felt necessary. His phone buzzed again. Email this time. From an address he didn't recognize. Subject line, "You should see this." He opened it cautiously. Could be a virus. Could be a trap. It was neither. It was a video file. He clicked play. Celine's face filled the screen. She was sitting in what looked like an expensive hotel room. Hair perfect. Makeup flawless. She looked directly into the camera with the kind of cold satisfaction that made his skin crawl. "Hello, Dorian," she said. "I imagine you're watching this in some motel room feeling sorry for yourself. Good. You deserve every bit of pain coming your way." She smiled. Cruel, beautiful. "You thought you could just discard me? Throw me out like garbage? I spent 8 months building relationships in your organization, learning every secret, documenting every crime. And you really believed I did it because I loved you?" She laughed. "I did it because men like you need to be destroyed. You build empires on fear and violence, and then act surprised when it comes back to destroy you. Well, congratulations. You destroyed yourself. The moment you chose mercy over power, you signed everyone's death warrant." Celine leaned forward, eyes bright with vindication. "That maid you saved? Lena? She was nothing, a tool, a catalyst. I knew if I pushed hard enough, you'd show weakness. And weakness in your world is fatal, so thank you. Thank you for being exactly as predictable as I knew you would be." The video cut to black. Then text appeared. "P.S. The federal investigation? That was always the endgame. I've been cooperating with them for 6 months. Everything you built? Already gone before you even realized. Sweet dreams." The email closed automatically, deleted itself from his inbox. Dorian sat motionless. 6 months. She'd been planning this for 6 months, long before the incident with the tea, long before he'd shown any sign of changing. She'd been systematically destroying him while sleeping beside him, while planning a wedding, while pretending to love him. The thoroughness of the betrayal was almost impressive. Almost. His phone rang immediately. Marcus. "You've been released?" Dorian asked. "Bail. Temporary. They have enough evidence to bury me 10 times over, but my lawyer bought me 48 hours outside." "Congratulations." "Don't." Marcus's voice was raw. "Just don't. I'm not calling for sympathy." "Why are you calling?" "Because I just got the same email you did. Celine's confession." "Confession?" "That's what it is. She laid out everything, how she played us all, how she documented crimes while pretending to be your partner, how she orchestrated the entire collapse. Sounds about right." "Dorian," Marcus's voice cracked slightly. "I was wrong." The admission hung in the air. "About what?" Dorian asked. "About everything, about thinking you'd lost your mind, about the coup, about—" He stopped. "About not trusting that you saw something in Celine the rest of us missed." "I didn't see anything. I just reacted when she hurt someone weaker. That's more than I did. More than any of us did." "That's not saying much." "No, it's not." They were quiet for a moment. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. I don't know. FBI wants me to cooperate, testify, help them close cases. Are you going to? Are you? Probably. My lawyer says it's the only way to avoid life in prison. So we all betray each other in the end. We all tell the truth in the end. There's a difference. Is there? Has to be. Otherwise, what's the point of any of this? Dorian didn't have an answer. For what it's worth, Marcus said, I'm sorry. For the coup. For not believing you. For, his voice dropped, for not being a better friend when you needed one. You were protecting what we built. I was protecting my own interests. Don't make it noble. Neither of us were noble. No, but you tried to be. That counts for something. Does it? I hope so, because if it doesn't, then the last 20 years were completely meaningless. Marcus hung up. Dorian sat watching the sun set over the water. Orange light painted the sky like fire. His entire organization was falling. Everyone he'd worked with facing prison. Everything he'd built collapsing into federal evidence rooms. And somehow, impossibly, it felt like freedom. Not because he was escaping consequences, but because the weight of maintaining the empire was finally completely gone. He drove back into the city as darkness fell. To the hospital. 4th floor. Room 412. Lena's mother was awake this time, sitting up slightly in bed, still pale, still weak, but alive. Lena sat beside her reading something on her phone. She looked up when Dorian knocked. You shouldn't be here, she said. I know. Federal agents were here earlier asking about you. What did you tell them? That I barely know you, that you helped with medical bills and then I never saw you again. Smart. It's also true. Dorian stepped inside the room, kept distance from the bed. I wanted to make sure you were both okay. We're fine. Mother's responding to treatment. Doctors are optimistic. Good. Lena's mother looked at him with tired eyes. You're the one who helped us. Yes, ma'am. My daughter says you're in trouble. Yes, ma'am. Serious trouble. Very serious. She studied his face. Are you a good man? The question should have been simple. It wasn't. No, ma'am, Dorian said honestly. I've done terrible things, hurt people, built my life on violence and fear. But you helped us. I did. Why? Because I was tired of being who I was. And who are you now? I don't know yet. She smiled slightly. That's an honest answer, at least. It's the only one I have. Lena stood. You should go. If the agents come back, I'm going. Dorian looked at her, really looked. I kept my promise. You're safe. Your mother's getting treatment. I'm gone from your life now. Good. But I wanted to say thank you. For what? For being the reason I finally changed, even if it destroyed everything. Lena's expression softened slightly. I wasn't trying to be anyone's catalyst. I know, that's what made it work. He turned to leave. Dorian? He stopped. Whatever you decide to do next, whatever life you build from this, make sure it's actually different, not just different crimes with a clear conscience. I'll try. That's not good enough. It's all I can promise. She nodded once. Then I guess that'll have to do. He left the hospital for the last time. Outside, rain had started. Light drizzle that made everything look softer than it was. He had 18 hours left before the FBI's deadline expired. 18 hours to decide between cooperation and prison. Between helping destroy everyone he'd worked with or trying to protect them even now. The choice should have been obvious. He drove to Ravencrest Estate. Police tape surrounded the property. Evidence markers scattered across the grounds. Federal agents had torn through everything looking for additional proof, but they'd left it standing. The house. The gardens. The fortress he'd built to prove he was untouchable. It looked smaller now. Less impressive. Just an expensive building full of empty rooms. He parked outside the gates and walked the perimeter. Memory flooded back with each step. The night Celine threw tea at Lena. The moment everything changed. The choice that had destroyed his entire world. Would he make it again, knowing what it cost, knowing everyone who'd suffer? The rain intensified, soaked through his clothes, washed blood from his shoulder wound. He stood in the downpour and realized the answer. Yes. He'd make the same choice again, not because it was smart, not because it was strategic, but because watching someone weaker get hurt and doing nothing would have destroyed him more slowly than this fast collapse. At least this way, the destruction was honest. At least this way, he knew who he was becoming instead of who he'd been. His phone rang. Agent Reeves. "Have you decided?" she asked. "Yes." "And?" "I'll cooperate. Full testimony. Everything I know. But I have conditions. You're not really in a position to make demands. Hear me out anyway." Silence. Then, "I'm listening. I want immunity from prosecution, complete immunity. That's not negotiable. I help you build cases against everyone involved, but I walk free at the end." "Why would we agree to that?" "Because I have documentation that proves political corruption at the highest levels. Senators, judges, people your investigation hasn't touched yet. I give you that, you give me freedom." More silence. "What documentation?" "Copies of everything Celine compiled, plus additional material she didn't know about. Hidden accounts, blackmail material, 20 years of insurance policies." "You're bluffing." "I'm not, and you know it. Otherwise, you wouldn't still be on this call." Agent Reeves was quiet for a long moment. "If you're lying, I'm not. I'll prove it. Give me an email address. I'll send samples in the next hour." "This doesn't mean immunity is guaranteed. But it means it's possible. That's all I need." "What's your second condition?" "Lena Marrow and her mother are completely off limits. No questioning, no pressure, no involvement in any cases. They're civilians who got caught in the crossfire. Leave them alone." "We don't have any reason to involve them." "Make it official. Put it in writing." "Fine. What else?" "That's it. Immunity for me. Protection for them. Everything else, you get full cooperation." "And your former organization, the people who worked for you?" "They make their own choices. Some will cooperate, some won't. I'm not protecting them, but I'm not actively destroying them either. I'll tell the truth. What happens after is on them." "That's more fair than they deserve." "Probably, but it's the line I'm drawing." Agent Reeves exhaled slowly. "Send the samples. If they're as good as you claim, we'll discuss immunity formally." "Understood." "And Mr. Vale? Whatever redemption arc you think you're on, this doesn't erase what you've done." "I know." "Good, because cooperation is just the beginning of paying what you owe." She hung up. Dorian stood in the rain outside the estate he'd never see again and sent the first batch of files to the FBI. Evidence that would destroy careers, ruin lives, expose corruption that went deeper than anyone suspected. The final act of the empire he'd built, not protecting it, burning it completely to the ground. The next 3 days blurred together, meetings with federal prosecutors, hours of testimony, detailed explanations of operations and crimes and decisions that had seemed so clear at the time. Marcus cooperated too, so did Chen. Williams refused and got maximum charges. The organization fragmented into individual survival, every person making their own choice about cooperation versus loyalty to something that no longer existed. Dorian told the truth about everything: the bodies, the bribes, the corruption, the violence. All of it. 20 years of crime laid bare in sterile conference rooms with lawyers taking notes and prosecutors building cases. It should have felt like betrayal. Instead, it felt like confession. Not the kind that brought forgiveness. The kind that at least acknowledged the truth. On the 4th day, Agent Reeves called with the official offer: full immunity in exchange for continued cooperation until all cases were resolved. "How long will that take?" Dorian asked. 2 years, maybe 3. You'll be in witness protection, new identity, new location, new life. And after? After you're free. As free as someone with your history can be. That's not very free. It's more than you deserve. Fair point. He signed the papers that afternoon. Dorian Vale ceased to exist legally. A new identity was created. New name, new background, new everything. The man who'd built an empire on fear became someone ordinary, someone forgettable, someone who could walk down streets without people whispering his name. It felt like death and rebirth happening simultaneously. Before he disappeared into the program, he made one final trip to the hospital. Room 412, last time. Lena's mother had been discharged. They were packing up her belongings when he arrived. "You're still here," Lena said. "Not for long. I'm leaving tonight. New identity, new life. You'll never see me again." "Good. But I wanted to make sure the medical trust fund was properly established. It's set up through a legitimate foundation now. Untraceable to me. Your mother's treatments are covered for as long as she needs them." Lena's eyes widened. "How much?" "Enough. More than enough. She'll be taken care of." "Why?" "Because it's the one thing I did right in 20 years of doing everything wrong." Lena's mother stood slowly, walked over to Dorian, looked up at him with clear eyes. "Thank you," she said simply. "You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do. My daughter is alive. I'm alive. Because you chose to be decent when it mattered. One decent choice doesn't balance the scales." "No, but it tips them, even slightly, and sometimes that's enough." She hugged him briefly. He stood rigid, unsure how to respond to kindness from someone who had every reason to hate what he represented. When she pulled back, there were tears in her eyes. "Whatever you've done," she whispered, "whoever you've been, you gave us life when ours was ending. That matters. Don't let anyone tell you it doesn't." Dorian's throat tightened. He nodded once. Couldn't trust himself to speak. Lena walked him to the elevator. "Where will you go?" she asked. "I don't know. Somewhere far from here. Somewhere I can be someone else completely." "Will it work? Becoming someone else?" "I have no idea. But I'm going to try. That's all anyone can do." The elevator doors opened. "Lena?" "Yeah?" "I'm sorry for everything. For making your life complicated. For—" "Stop." She held up her hand. "You're not going to get absolution from me. What happened, happened. We're alive. You're leaving. That's enough." "Is it?" "It has to be." He stepped into the elevator. "Dorian?" She caught the door before it closed. "One more thing." "What?" "When you figure out who you are without the empire and the fear and the violence, send a postcard or something. I want to know if people like you can actually change. And if I can't, then at least you tried. That's more than most people do." The doors closed between them. Dorian rode down alone, walked out of the hospital into evening air that smelled like rain coming. A car waited at the curb. Federal protection. They'd drive him to a safe location. Start the process of erasing Dorian Vale from existence. He climbed in without looking back. The city passed outside the windows, lights beginning to glow as darkness fell. Millions of people living normal lives, going home to families, making dinner, watching television, existing in the simple, beautiful mundanity of ordinary life. For the first time in 20 years, Dorian wanted that. Not the power, not the empire, not the fear and respect that came with his name, just the quiet normalcy of being someone who didn't carry blood on their hands. Whether he could achieve it was another question entirely. 6 months later, a man named David Wright lived in a small town 3 states away. He worked in a hardware store, lived in a modest apartment, kept to himself mostly. No one knew he used to be Dorian Vale. No one knew he'd built an empire that stretched across the city. No one knew he'd destroyed everything to save one person he barely knew. He was just David, quiet, polite, ordinary. He testified via video link when prosecutors needed him, watched from a distance as trials concluded. Marcus got 12 years. Chen got 15. Others got more or less depending on cooperation and severity of crimes. Celine disappeared. Witness protection of her own, probably. Or fled the country. Either way, she vanished from the story she'd worked so hard to orchestrate. David watched it all happen through news feeds and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not guilt, just acceptance that consequences were finally catching up to everyone involved. One Tuesday afternoon, he was restocking shelves when someone approached. "Excuse me, do you have deck screws, 3-inch?" He turned and froze. Lena stood there holding a piece of paper with a hardware list. She looked older, hair shorter, but unmistakably her. "Aisle 7, he managed. "Middle shelf." She studied his face. Recognition flickered. "Do I know you?" "I don't think so." "You look familiar." "I have one of those faces." She frowned slightly, then shrugged. "Must be mistaken." "Thanks." She walked toward aisle 7. David stood motionless, heart pounding, mind racing. What was she doing here? How did she find him? Was it coincidence or... He followed quietly, watched her scan the shelf, select a box of screws. She turned suddenly, caught him watching. Okay, seriously. I know you from somewhere. I don't think so, ma'am. Ma'am? She laughed. I'm 20. Don't ma'am me. Sorry, habit. She stepped closer, eyes narrowing. Wait, the voice. I know that voice. You're mistaken. No, I'm not. She stared hard at his face. Holy shit. Dorian? He should have denied it, should have walked away, should have maintained the cover identity. Instead, he just deflated. How did you find me? Find? I didn't. I'm here visiting my mother. She moved here for follow-up treatments. Cheaper than the city. I'm helping her set up her new place. Lena looked around the hardware store. What are you doing here? Living? As a hardware store clerk? It's honest work. That's one way to put it. They stood in the aisle while classic rock played softly over speakers, and other customers browsed nearby, completely unaware that a criminal and his accidental catalyst were having a reunion between the screws and the sandpaper. You look different, Lena said finally. New name, new face. Well, not surgically, just different hair, different posture, different everything. David, she read from his name tag. Is that what they're calling you now? That's what I'm calling myself. Does it feel real? Not yet, but maybe someday. She set down the screws. My mother asks about you sometimes. Wonders if you're okay. Tell her I'm fine. Are you? I'm alive. That's more than I expected. That's not the same thing as fine. No, but it's honest. They were quiet for a moment. I'm glad you're alive, Lena said, even if you are working at a hardware store in the middle of nowhere. It's peaceful here. Is that what you wanted? Peace? I don't know what I wanted, but peace is better than what I had. Which was? War. Constant war. Against everyone, including myself. Lena nodded slowly. That sounds exhausting. It was. And now? Now I sell screws and try to figure out who David Wright is supposed to be. Any progress on that? Not really, but I'm trying. That's all I asked for. She picked up the screws again. I should go. My mother's waiting. How is she? Cancer-free for 6 months. Doctors are optimistic it won't come back. That's good? It's everything. Lena's eyes glistened slightly. She's alive because you helped us. Whatever else happened, whatever crimes you committed, that one thing was good. Hold on to that when the guilt gets bad. The guilt is always bad. Then hold on to it harder. She turned to leave, stopped, looked back one final time. David? Yeah? I meant what I said at the hospital, about wanting to know if people like you can change. And? I think you're trying. That's more than most people do. Is trying enough? I don't know. But it's something, and sometimes something is all we get. She left. David stood in aisle 7 holding a box of nails and trying not to cry in the middle of his shift. That night, he sat in his apartment eating reheated pasta and watching rain streak down the windows. The apartment was small, sparsely furnished, nothing like Ravencrest Estate, nothing like the luxury he'd surrounded himself with for 20 years. But it was his, not built on blood, not maintained through fear, just a quiet space where a man named David Wright existed without hurting anyone. It wasn't redemption. Redemption probably wasn't possible for someone with his history, but it was different, and different was enough to keep trying. His phone rang, the secure line the feds had given him. Agent Reeves. How are you settling in? She asked. Fine. You sound tired. I am tired. Final trial wraps next week. After that, your testimony obligations are complete. So I'm free? As free as we can make you. You'll keep the new identity, keep the protections. But officially, you're done with the justice system. What happens to everyone else? Most are already serving sentences. A few are still fighting appeals. But the organization you built? It's completely dismantled. Gone. Good. Is it? Yes. It needed to end. Even if it meant destroying everyone involved? They made their own choices, just like I did. Agent Reeves was quiet for a moment. You know, when I first started investigating you, I thought you were a monster, pure evil. But now? Now, Now I think you were just human, deeply flawed human, who made terrible choices and finally tried to do better. Is that supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to be the truth. Truth doesn't always help. No, but it's better than lies. She hung up. David finished his pasta, washed the dish, stared out at the rain. Tomorrow he'd wake up at 6, go to work at the hardware store, help customers find nails and screws and paint, come home, eat dinner, sleep, repeat. It sounded boring. It sounded perfect. Not because it was glamorous or exciting or powerful, but because it was simple. And after 20 years of complexity built on cruelty, simple felt like salvation. He didn't know if Dorian Vale could truly become David Wright. Didn't know if the blood on his hands would ever wash clean. Didn't know if the guilt would ever fade or if the nightmares would ever stop. But he was trying. Every single day, he was trying to be someone different than the man who'd built empires on fear. And maybe that was the point. Maybe redemption wasn't about erasing the past. Maybe it was about choosing every single day to be someone different going forward. Maybe change wasn't a destination you reached. Maybe it was a direction you kept walking even when the path was unclear and the destination was invisible and every step felt impossible. Maybe being better wasn't about becoming perfect. Maybe it was about being honest about your failures and trying anyway. The rain continued falling outside. David Wright stood at the window watching it and thought about a scared girl in a mansion and a moment of cruelty that had somehow sparked transformation. He thought about empires burning and lives destroyed and consequences finally catching up after years of running. He thought about his mother's words in the hospital. You gave us life when ours was ending. That matters. One decent act in 20 years of cruelty. One moment of choosing differently. One split-second decision that had cost him everything and given him something he never expected. A chance to be human instead of a monster. It wasn't much, but it was something. And sometimes when everything else is gone and the empire has fallen and the name you built your life on no longer exists, something is enough. Not to erase the past, but to build a different future. One day at a time. One choice at a time. One act of quiet decency in a life that had held too little of it for far too long. The rain washed the streets clean outside, and David Wright stood in his small apartment in his ordinary life and made peace with the impossible truth. That change was possible, even for people like him, even when it cost everything, even when it hurt. Because the alternative, staying who he'd been, would have killed him more slowly and more thoroughly than any bullet ever could. And at least this way he could sleep at night. Not peacefully, not without nightmares, but honestly. And after 20 years of lies, honesty felt like the first step towards something that might eventually, possibly, someday, resemble redemption. Or if not redemption, then at least survival. And for now, survival was enough.